Okay, we're streaming now.
Okay, good evening, everybody. This is a meeting of the Neighbourhoods and Public Spaces Committee. This is a meeting of the Council which is being held remotely. The meeting is being recorded and streamed via YouTube, where members of the public are able to watch the meeting. The recording will be available on the Council's website following the meeting. Please note that any comments posted on the chat feed of the Council's YouTube page during the recording of this meeting will not be monitored by the Council. If members can mute themselves and raise your hand if you wish to speak, just raise your hand. I can see everybody, so it's the easiest way of doing it. And I'll ask members of the committee to unmute themselves when we're required to vote. Okay, item 1, apologies from absence. Julie.
Now, Councillor, there's no apologies, but just to say the agenda did say there was a vacancy on the committee. That vacancy has now been filled by Councillor Dadds, who is present this evening.
Thank you. And welcome to Councillor Dadds to the committee. Right, item 2, if there's no more apologies, declaration of interest. Any declarations of interest, please raise your hand. Councillor Buckley.
Just general interest as a member of the County Council in connection with item 9 and actually indeed also with items 8 and 10 relating to waste.
Okay. Before I go to the minutes, can I just point out that this evening, Councillor Sargent is present with us for item 8 on the waste strategy, and Councillor Rimmer is here with us for item 5 on the Pitsea swimming pool development. But in both of those, I will call members first of the committee. Okay, minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of November. Confirmation of the minutes. All those, well, can't do that, can we? I will vote in favour. Councillor Dadds. You're muted, Councillor Dadds.
I raised my hand, so yes.
Yeah, but you weren't present there, no, were you, at the meeting?
No.
So you're voting for the minutes, though?
Yep, I have no objection to that.
Okay. Councillor Yacoub.
In favour.
Councillor Ferguson.
In favour.
Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, in favour, they were accurate.
Councillor Blake.
In favour.
Right, thank you very much. Item 4, the Neighbourhood and Public Spaces Work Committee programme on pages 15 to 18. There's the work programme there. Can I just point out that on the work programme, there's quite a lot of work still going on with this committee. And at this point in time, there could well be an additional meeting in February. We're looking at what we might have to bring forward. For instance, the climate change discussion and report may well have to come to that committee if we have an additional one. Anybody else got any items on the work programme, please? Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put forward an item to be on the work programme to deal with the issue of shopping trolleys that have been left within our parks and on estates. I'm sure I speak for a number of councillors that are concerned by the rise in shopping trolleys around, and I think it's right that we have an opportunity as a committee to discuss this. Yep,
okay, fine. Mr. Brace, do you wish to comment?
No, quite happy to, because it has been a subject of a lot of complaints from not only members, but also from members of the public. And I would say that my team have been trying to coerce our retailers to collect their trolleys, but we're having limited success. So it would be very useful to bring that report to a future meeting as early as possible, in our view.
Okay, fine. Councillor Ferguson, if it's agreed by the committee, we will try and add that towards before the end of the municipal year, at least, possibly in the February or March agenda, if that's okay. Anybody else on the work programme, please? Okay. If members would unmute themselves without.
Blue flag and by waving, but you obviously didn't see me.
Sorry, Malcolm. I wish you'd stay in the same place on the screen.
Well, unfortunately, what happens, the speakers always seem to turn up towards the top of the page, which I agree with you. It'd be far better if they all stayed where they started and you know who's who. But okay. I did put my blue hand up. I don't know if you can see it still because I haven't lowered it down. But
no, if you raise your hand like this, it's easier to see.
Right. Fine. I don't mind which hand I raise as long as so all I wanted to do is just to point out a minor typo in the work program.
Okay.
And that's on the very last item on page 17, clean away planning application. It's not a clean away.
It's clear away. Yes, you're absolutely right.
And I don't think clean away would wish to be besmirched with that particular that particular project.
I tend to agree, and I did actually spot that and point that out, but I didn't realise it hadn't been changed. So my apologies for that. Okay, if you'd like to unmute yourselves, in favour of the work, I vote in favour of the work programme. Councillor Dadds. In favour. Councillor Buckley.
Sorry, against.
Against, okay. Councillor Yacoub.
In favour.
Councillor Ferguson.
In favour.
Councillor Blake.
Abstain.
Abstain. Okay, thank you. Plenty of paper here tonight. Okay, item 5, Pitsea swimming pool development, a verbal update. I think. Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, Chairman, I just wanted to make a point. We're all aware of the fact that there is work going on around Pitsea swimming pool, and this is not to raise an issue directly about that work, but I am concerned that we get a verbal update on this project when it is something that's been ongoing. I see no reason.
Well, can you, Councillor Buckley, if you let me please, let's have Mr. Brace's update first of all. And we'll see what you have to say after that, if you don't mind. It would be appreciated. Thank you. And Mr. Brace might be able to explain why it's a verbal update. Mr. Brace.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, members will be aware we have been pursuing quite strongly with the development of Pitsea Pool. Members will know that we had a failed procurement exercise, which we have had to do a considerable amount of work around that, and also the impact of COVID further delayed with our inability to get industry information from our contractor, and also by looking at what could be a solution to the problem we encountered first time. What I can say is we made fantastic progress up until the start of November, and unfortunately leisure has once again been closed. Now, the difficulty is that when that happens to a company such as Everyone Active, who provides our services, their time is spent negotiating and agreeing legal agreements for financial support from their local authorities to keep them going whilst closed. So we were unable to conclude the one outstanding item, which was some legal issues around procurement for that pool. The report was ready. But I can't bring the report without the legal confirmation that what we're doing is above board and the right thing to do, does deliver us value for money. So it is the one outstanding item. So now we know, I'll be giving an update, our leisure will be reopening, certainly over the next week or so. Myself and Grant will be back in with Everyone Active with our legal team to get over the last bump in the road. So my apologies. I know it's very frustrating. I can assure you our contractor and myself and Grant are very frustrated. We've not been able to bring the report this evening because we've been trying so hard to do it. So apologies to all members that we've not been able to finish that, but it's certainly not from the want of trying. But we will get it to you certainly by the next committee because it was, as I say, one item we had to tick off from the many that we had to do. So
thank you, Mr. Brace. I'm hoping it will come to the January committee. It depends on the work that's going on with the legal process, and that is one of the reasons we may have to move stuff. And I want to put a February committee in should it need to be done by then. We want to see it done. It's quite clear. We want to see a swimming pool in Pitsea. The money is there. Office has been working extremely hard, and the reason the verbal report, because it'd been a written report and gone out 10 days ago, it might have been a little bit different. I don't know, but we're hoping now we know the lockdown is finishing. Also, there's been people not here in their legal team who have been furloughed as well. That's caused a problem. By December the 2nd, hopefully they will be back as well. And therefore, these progress can be made quite quickly. Now, that's the reason it's a verbal report. I think it's a good report. We're going to go ahead with it. Hopefully, January, February committee, that will be done and dusted. Now, Councillor Buckley first, and I'll bring Councillor Ferguson in afterwards. Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, Jim, I'm not disagreeing with anything that Mr. Brace has said, but I do think that we could have had an interim written report, even if it said we cannot finish the progress until such time as we've had the legal advice, which is delayed by furlough. There would have been no reason why we couldn't do that. We've all been locked down now for 3 and a bit weeks. So I just make the point that if an item is on an agenda, there should only be a verbal report only if something has occurred in the days since the publication of the agenda. In other words, a new emergency comes up. Yes, we need to know about it, but the agenda is published. That's fine. But in this case, it wasn't that. It is basically a delay in, if you like, the red tape. And I would be quite happy to accept a report that says, due to the red tape caused by a furlough or caused by the lockdown, we cannot give the full report. Things are progressing, and that would have been perfectly okay. But as I say, I've made my point now, Chairman, and as I say, I don't have an issue about the project, but it's just the fact we haven't got a written report.
Okay, Councillor, thank you, Councillor Buckley. We note your comments. Can I just say that Councillor Rimmer did say to me the other evening, I did say to him at the time, I didn't know what the verbal update was going to be, because I thought it was, as it is something different to what it was 4 or 5 days ago. So Mr. Brace has been very open. We've been open with you. I don't know if Councillor Ferguson, I think Mr. Brace may want to come back. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure I speak on behalf of all members that we're looking forward to seeing a swimming pool within Pitsea, and I know the Pitsea residents definitely are. And I want to thank Mr. Brace for his update tonight and the work of his team, particularly over the last few months in really difficult circumstances in progressing this as much as they have. I think just to echo your words tonight, Mr. Chairman, we're absolutely committed to this project. The funding is there, the site's been identified. We just need to resolve that last issue, and I'm really keen to see that happen as soon as possible, and really pleased by the update tonight that we're able to do that as soon as we're able to.
Okay, I've got no other member indicating the moment. So, sorry, Councillor Blake, apologise.
Yeah, no, I didn't indicate. I'd only just decided to indicate just then, Chairman, so no need to apologise. Yeah, I'm obviously being a person who lives in Pitsea and has done since 1981. I'm excited to see this. Make no apologies, I'll be honest with you, for the closure of the other one. Something that I won't do, but this is something that would certainly Craig, which is why he's on here tonight, and others have been promoting extremely well when it was a Conservative administration. Can't say we anymore because I'm no longer a Conservative councillor, but when the Conservative administration was in, and I'm glad to see it's been followed up and enhance everything that Paul Brace said there. It's circumstances that are stopping it going further, because we've been a lot further down the line. And I say it's good that it's continuing on what was started originally by Craig and crew, shall we say. I don't like to promote you too much, Craig, but that's about it. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Councillor Dadds, I'm sorry, Craig, but Councillor Dadds has now put his hand up, so just a moment longer. David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to echo the comments by previous councillors. I think we all welcome and support the pool in Pitsea, and obviously, and it's a continual support and commitment from the Conservative Party to build on leisure within Basildon. We've got some fantastic facilities, sporting centre. Eversley had all that funding and support, and this is just building upon the great and solid foundation that we've put in place. So I don't expect anything less from Councillor Ferguson to support us, what we started with, and I hope he will continue in the good efforts that we've done to bring this project to a conclusion.
Thank you, Councillor Dadds. I think all members of the council, as far as I'm concerned, I've been fully behind this since day one, when money was put in by the previous administration before yours for swimming pool investment, both in Billericay and in Pitsea, and possibly Langdon, but it didn't come about. So yes, we wanted to see that. And I think that all 42 members of the council are behind this. And to me, when there's a good project, I couldn't care less whether it's Conservative, Labour or whoever puts it forward. If we can do it and it's in benefit of the borough, let's do it. Craig, you've waited very patiently. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And it's very good of you to allow me to speak on this item. I know it wasn't down as a written report, but I think you realise that there might be something substantial said today. And it has been, in terms of it sounds like we're much further along than when we had that pause initially for the initial lockdown. And I acknowledge that, and thank you to the officers for their hard work in this respect as well. Yes, this was something that I lobbied for hard with my group. I was happy to have a great chairman of Leisure, Culture and Environment at the time that I worked alongside. Who was
top right-hand corner.
He may be on your screen, and who helped champion it. Councillor Dadds was also a supporter. When he was mayor, he was the guy who sort of cut the ribbon on the AstroTurf pitches that were actually put there in the Eversley Centre. So it was a site we'd identified. We'd also allocated money to it, but then obviously change of administration, the project's moved on. I accept that members here tonight been supportive of the project. I accept that. I don't accept, I'm sorry to say, that all 42 have been supportive from the very beginning. There was cynicism from the leader of the council about whether even £2 million would be able to fill the pool with water, was the comment that was made at the time, and said that the Eversley site was not a suitable site, and he's been on public record with that. I'm glad that you've been able to change his mind, Mr. Chairman, on that, and I'm glad that there's more support on it. I see my role as a ward councillor who sees this new amenity coming to an area which desperately needs it and desperately wants it, to keep your feet to the fire on this. So apologies if I come across as nagging or lobbying too hard or too pushy on this, but I will keep doing that unashamedly until we've got spade in the ground, and then until we've got the pool there with water in it and people swimming in it. I think this could be great for all the young people of Pitsea, but it could also be a great amenity for the whole community, and in terms of elder residents who've actually come forward to me and said how they've actually missed not having a swimming pool anymore. The interesting thing for me is the concept of this swim gym, which makes it more sustainable economically for the future. And I think the assistant director is somebody who's actually been very much behind that model and showing how that could be more sustainable for the future. And you see, every time I speak, I attract new speakers to your committee. Mr. Chairman, so you surely should thank me for that. But all in all, I think there's some good progress that's been made on that. Let's keep this up and let's get this swimming pool delivered. It would be good to know from the assistant director when he thinks we would actually, I know this might be saying how long is a piece of string, but when he actually thinks we'll have a swimming pool opened in Pitsea.
Right. Mr. Brace can answer that in a moment. I'll just add what I said. To me, a facility such as this, wherever it is, should be something all 42 members of the council should and probably would support. I'm not saying some may and some may not, as you inferred, but I think it's important to get a swimming pool back in Pitsea. And officers have been working really hard, despite many other things which they had to deal with during the last few months. One of them being me. Councillor, Mr. Brace.
In terms of date, I would say we would be getting very close at this time next year to completing it. But that would be if everything in a fair wind. I get a report to you in January, the legals are sorted and it goes the way we want. But so I would hope we'll be very close to finishing, probably ready for a January opening, ready for when everybody's had their turkey and want to do some fitness. So it will be the peak time to open. So because of the design and the way it's built, it means it is a quick turnaround in terms of getting the facility from planning right the way through to opening is a lot shorter. So I would hope by January 2022 we'll have a fully running facility.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was hoping for the night off, but Councillor Rimmer has brought me into the meeting with his contribution tonight, and I think it is important that we do establish facts here, and that is, of course, that the £9 million in the 18-19 budget that was allocated for the Billericay swimming pool. The administration that followed for that 12-month period didn't do a lot, but when they came in, one of the things that they did say was that £9 million was going to magically appear to build 3 different swimming pools across the borough. But the only problem was, of course, they forgot to allocate the money to the building of the swimming pools, which is quite a big issue when it comes to building it. So, of course, if you don't allocate money, you cannot put water into any swimming pool that may or may not be built. So thankfully, this administration corrected the record. Councillor Kevin Blake mentioned the 2012 decision to close the swimming pool in Pitsea. That is the reason I am here. So in one sense, I thank Councillor Blake for that decision. But on the other hand, it was a disaster of a policy. And the reality is that what we are seeking to correct, not just this swimming pool that we're talking about here, not just the improvements we want to see in Billericay, but also with, and you will discuss this later on, Mr. Chairman, the brilliant youth zone that is coming to Basildon Town Centre. You will see for yourselves that we are not only investing in leisure, not only investing in activities that will get people of all ages in our borough active, but we will do it in a way that means it's accessible. And I think that is a crucial part of any criteria when it comes to investing in leisure. The Sporting Village, as great a facility as it is, was built on the wrong side of the park, and as a consequence is not as accessible. That has been a huge issue. We were told in 2012 that you could close Pitsea swimming pool because you would then have a bus service taking people to the Sporting Village. And it never materialized, because what we found was that people want a local facility. So I'm very proud that it's this administration, both previously in 2018-19 in that financial year, and then again this year, that's allocated this money. We have learned from the previous administration what not to do when it comes to building facilities that no one can get to. And we are making sure that we are going to the heart of where people want their leisure activities, right in the middle of their towns. And we are righting the disastrous wrong that was to close Pitsea swimming pool in 2012 and giving the people on the east of our borough somewhere to go for swimming. And then, of course, making sure that every 8 to 19-year-old in this borough has somewhere to go, something to do, and someone to talk to, with the first youth zone in the East of England region, which is a brilliant investment. And I look forward to that debate later on, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and we will have that debate later on this evening on the youth zone. I don't particularly want to dwell on past history, because otherwise we'll have a mammoth debate on past history. I would think that if people are honest, all councillors will admit in administrations mistakes have been made in the past. They'll probably be made in the future as well. But that happens. And if that was a mistake, and a lot of people think that was a mistake to close Pitsea swimming pool, if it was a mistake, so be it. Some people don't think it was a mistake, but here we're going now in the future to provide a pool in Pitsea. And that is going to happen, and it is happening thanks to this administration. I've been fully behind it from the word go. I've been pushing officers to get to the stage where we could actually put a spade in the ground. If it hadn't have been for the COVID-19, that would have happened by now. No doubt about it. Mr. Brace and his staff have been working very, very hard on it, and that's going to happen. So let's look to the future now. Make sure it happens. While I'm here as chairman, I will always make sure it goes ahead. I'm sure other members will as well. I'm going to bring one more speaker in, which is Councillor Blake, and then we'll move on, because it's only for noting the verbal report. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, I can't let Gavin go. I get on well with Gavin, but I can't let him go all his own way on that. What I would say is it was started by the previous administration, but it has been continued, which is why I'm supportive of it. But I would say there was one project that we were criticised for starting, and has been a huge, huge success. And I know he will admit it himself, and that is the sporting village. So Headley and Tony Headley did sort of push that forward. So that is one good thing that happened. So I think we can work together and accept that this Pitsea swimming pool is with the gym, as was mentioned, will be a success. And we can move forward, hopefully, Chairman, with all people supporting this. But to say that nothing was achieved, the sporting village is a huge success, as I hope this swimming pool will be. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, for that. Mr. Brace, I can't see you anymore, but thank you for the update, unless you wish to add anything. Okay. Now, you're going to be held to that forecast now of when a spade goes in the ground. We will try and make sure it goes in earlier. Okay. Right. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Craig, and have a good evening. You can stay if you wish to, but you can't.
I have another meeting, but thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, then. Take care. Right. Item 6, the play review update. That's on pages 19 to 28. Now, there's quite a lot of detail there. The recommendations are on page 19. Where can I see? I'm looking for Grant. There you are. Grant.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so bringing back a report today on our ongoing work in relation to a play review across our borough. I've previously spoken to committee about the current situation. Just to reiterate some of that, currently 145 play areas in our borough in mixed ownership, obviously principally owned by the council, with only only 2 that are not. Up until now, we've been bringing proposals to look at to carrying out a full assessment of all of the play areas in the council's ownership, looking at using Play England's Playable Space Quality Assessment Tool, which is an independent tool which enables practitioners to score the play value of any facility. It's been a huge undertaking of all of the play areas. And that's been done on the basis of being able to support the council's quality, not quantity approach to play, which was an approach passed this committee and harks back, I must say, to the previous play strategy, or sorry, the current play strategy that we're looking to update, I should say. The aim throughout this whole process and continuing from previous work is that for all residents should have access to well-designed, good quality, inclusive play spaces. But it is worth pointing out that having carried out the playable space quality assessment tool, that we're not necessarily in that situation. Members will recognise that a previous review has been done of play spaces, that had reduced an initial tranche of play spaces, and this new review is looking at that further. So currently there is a significant number of play spaces across the borough that are offering either a poor or average play value, and as such do not meet the council's desired good standard. And we're also identified, I appreciate I'm going over old ground here, but just to set up the conversation, a number of inappropriate locations, which we call them inappropriate. That could be due to environmental factors, the closeness to residential homes and causing impacts such as antisocial behaviour, vandalism, or even simply low usage. So to give an update from the previous meetings, what has happened since we last met and discussed this is we were given approval by this committee on the 10th of June and subsequently held another meeting with the committee members on the 15th of July to look at the detailed proposals that are set out in the play review, with 5 consultations with members only, but all 42 members, divvied across the 5 towns. And those meetings were very good, were very vibrant in places, and they took place over September to November. I think it's fair to say we had differing levels of attendees at different meetings, but that the conversation genuinely was very advantageous to be taking this work forward. So you'll see on page 21, there's a whole host of things that we captured from that, and I won't go over all of those, but I'll bring out a flavour of some of the things that we discussed with members and some of the things that members identified as being important. Items such as needing to ensure that the new play review would cater fully for children with disabilities. So we kept up with our inclusive play, which I think all parties will agree is important. That we engage with parish and town councils as part of this work, and I think that's perhaps part of our conversation today about taking this next step forward. That also seeking clarification on the future use of any sites, whereby any sites may be removed if that is the case moving forward, giving assurances that part of that was returning the sites back to their natural state, whether that be grass or concrete, depending on the site where they're being removed from. The importance of working with schools. So lots and lots of kind of things that members discuss as being important. So what I'm bringing back today is just, I guess, an understanding of those initial conversations and setting out the next stage, which is for a consultation plan to be now developed for consultation with the community, importantly. And our approach to that would be to looking at a combination of online and face-to-face, but obviously that would depend on legislation and the restrictions at the time, and then therefore to come back to a future committee in I think we're setting the work schedule for March this year. So I would just refer the committee back to the recommendations, which is that the committee notes the outcomes of the consultation sessions with ward members thus far, and therefore, and that the questions and scope of the subsequent consultation with local communities is agreed with the chairman of this group before launching, and therefore, as I mentioned just then, that a further report comes back to March this year following the consultation with communities. Thank you, everyone. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Before I bring members in, can I just say that doing it this way, I think, is a very important way. We've talked to members of the committee, original members of the committee, first of all, and then to ward members. My disappointment is that the percentage of ward members who actually came to the meetings to participate, I think, was disappointing in my view. So I think there could have been more input, but there was input, and those who made their input, I thought was most useful, really was. With this play review strategy, we are being proactive. so that we're planning for 10 years what we can do. There will be capital monies made available for what we do, and it's going to be a better way of spending money rather than being reactive all the time. When something goes wrong, let's rush around and try and put something right. Let's be proactive, plan what we want in our play areas, make the good hubs, etc., etc. I'm going to bring Councillor Blake in first of all.
Thank you, Chairman. Absolutely supportive of this, and have been for many years. It's something that going back many seemed like donkey's years now when this was first started, and this is just the second tranche of it. So it's hard at times. It's a hard decision to make on it, but it's the right decisions to make again. I just want to sort of bring out one of the issues that we had at the time. Was that these play areas that are taken away, I'm pretty certain in my head, the areas that are left obviously become hubs, and they're within a certain distance from anybody that's a child needs to go there. So I think that's what we had last time. I just need confirmation that is the same this time, because that was the sensible approach. So every child within the borough is a small distance away from one of these hubs. I'd say totally agree with this, and look forward to seeing it progress, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Yeah, I think that point is well taken, and it is the case. That's why we split the area up into, I think it was, how many zones? Mr. Taylor would tell me it was 20.
I've got 23 in my head, but I'm not going to be counted on that.
In my head. Didn't like to say it. I'm glad you did.
Okay.
23 zones, because while parks might look close together, when a major road is in between, there's not easy access to those. So you've got to look where those kids would go to. So that is part of the zonal process in which we were looking at. I've got Councillor Buckley, then Councillor Dadds.
Yeah,
Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of things. I was amongst those that didn't attend the consultations, and I didn't receive the invite to the first one. At the second one, I happened to be up the hospital with my other half, so that's my reason for non-attendance, because I do like to attend everything that I possibly can. I've just got a couple of points. In principle, this is the right thing to do, and it was kicked off under our administration anyway. So to review, it was. Councillor Blake, I'm sure, will recall that as well.
The last play strategy was in 2006, if I'm not. Yes, it's 2006.
Going on, but yeah, let's put that to one side.
Yeah, okay.
It's the right thing to do. There's no question about that. I've just got a couple of observations and one question for the officer, if I may. In terms of the observations, there are a number of locations where residents have been concerned about the future, and of one in very close to where you live, where residents have raised concerns, not so much about removal of equipment, but about what might happen to the site. And I think what we do need to be able to do is to reassure residents in not just there, but in other areas where equipment's being removed, what the future of those sites are. I frankly don't think any, or probably many, could be used for much other than a form of recreation or landscaping in any event. I have a slight concern over not the consultation, but the methodology of consultation, given that we are in a lockdown now, and maybe I'm reading between the lines in what the Prime Minister has said, but I would expect us, by the look of things, to go into another lockdown after Christmas, or at least some control. And that does worry me about the ability to get face-to-face with the public. And I would just say to you that I would rather see that part deferred slightly than not undertaken correctly. Online is fine, that doesn't matter, but not all of the people that are affected are online, and not all will look and see that there is a consultation going on. Essex, for example, has a section on its website for consultations. I don't know of anybody that would think to look there just in case there's one that affects them. And I suspect the same would apply with Basildon. The question, though, that I had relates actually to the handful of non-Basildon council sites, those under South Anglia and the likes. And I'd like to know from the officer, do we actually have any power to impose standards on them? Because some of them, I think, have got to the likes of South Anglia through the back door. They came from the old commission for new towns to us, and the estate got transferred to them, complete with all of what was on it. Have we actually got any power to say to them, actually, you must maintain a certain standard or you must improve? So I'm just seeking an explanation rather than anything else, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Mr. Taylor, do you just want to come back on that point first of all?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, if you don't mind, I mean, you're right. I have discussed face-to-face if applicable. I think what we've tried to do is write a report which said in every way possible, we would like to do the most meaningful consultation we could. Of course, I would set out that acting within the COVID regulations and acting safely is imperative. So please rest assured that we would certainly not be doing anything other than that, but we would take that point very importantly. With regards the standards for perhaps South Anglia housing and the like, no, we don't have I would say we don't actually have power for things that currently exist, but if we were writing a strategy, we have good relationships with many of our housing association partners and the like. I think we'd want them to be part of the conversation, perhaps to kind of adopt our standards. Of course, what we do have, where we are the planning authority for new estates, or where play will be part of that, is we want the strategy to set out exactly what the Basildon standards are, so we'll be able to influence from a new point of view, but also influence what exists currently by our good working relationships. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Can I just add from what Councillor Buckley said, and he referred to one particular play area where there's, I think, one or perhaps two pieces of equipment. Unfortunately, that came up at a Shopgate Parish Council meeting because we circulated the zones to members, and within a day of those being circulated, it was being pushed around locally in that area by someone, obviously a member of this council, because they're the only people who had the information that that play area was being taken out, and it was discussed the next night at a Shopgate Parish Council meeting, where I gave the insurance as a member of Shopgate Parish Council. If it was removed, what we were doing was looking at a strategy, and that hadn't even been discussed what we're going to do with that play area. But if any are removed, they will be returned, as Mr. Brace has said, or Mr. Taylor has said, to grassland or whatever was there before. I'm now going to bring in Councillor Dadds. Did you have your hand up? I think you did. And Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Yacoub.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think we all agree that we should provide good quality play areas for all we can. I obviously come late to looking at this item being on the committee today, but I have read the report, and it may be that Mr. Grant can Taylor can maybe clarify a couple of points, because at the moment it looks like the sort of assessment is based on location, good location, low usage, and in effect inappropriate locations. And I wondered whether actually low usage, for example, could be because of antisocial behaviour, and it would be good usage if there was good equipment, and there could be a number of permutations like that. But I think I want to try to have an understanding, and obviously inclusive play and play for all is really important. What about need some assurances? What about looking at the demographic, where we have areas of deprivation, the inability to maybe travel as far, the need and location for play areas, because I think that is equally as important to understand. It might be poor, it might be underused, and it may have issues of antisocial behaviour, but the need in that location is essential, and maybe we need to be looking on how to make that more secure and better play. Because I know that I, as a parent, have been to the park many times with my children, toddlers and young, and getting out the house. Sometimes when children are young, you need to get out the house. They need to let off steam, but also the parents need to take the children around to the park. And until you've experienced it, I don't think you can describe it. But these park areas can be very important for families that maybe don't have a lot of space or want to get out and just take a break from the routine and have half an hour, 15 minutes on the swing, whatever it may be. And I'm conscious that if an area has low usage and in an area that's in need, I would not want to take that away. And I don't know how we're going to deal with that through the consultation, because obviously everyone's going to say, yes, we want good quality, good locations, and that we need to invest. Obviously, clearly, the report sets out the money that's needed over 10 years. I think it's not all or nothing. You do it gradually anyway, and there's going to be community monies coming through planning gain, etc., whatever shape that may be. And obviously, I know that Councillor Callaghan has plans for a number of developments in the town centre, which will have planning gain, which obviously will mean that you can get contribution to some of these infrastructure that we need in the town centre and across the borough. But so obviously I'm not really interested if a location and a need is satisfied by good quality play equipment in an area, then whether the land is surplus or not, i.e. you remove something and it's not required, then that's fine. And whatever happens to the land, that will be a discussion on case-by-case basis, I expect. But I am conscious that I want to be inclusive in play, but also inclusive for everyone to be able to have access to play.
Thank you, Councillor Dadds. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, Mayor, thank you for the work that you've done over the last 18 months and the work of this committee in bringing this forward. I think we all want the best possible play spaces for young people across this borough, and we must do all we can to make sure they're there. I also want to thank you for the thorough way that this has been carried out of involving members of the committee and group leaders in discussions early on and extending that invitation there and then going out to ward members. And I think that the next stage of this is quite right in going out to a consultation with residents and listening to their views. And I'm looking forward to seeing and hearing back from what the residents would like to see in this play space review and the responses to the consultation there. Clearly, we need to think about how we do that consultation, but we shouldn't hold back in doing it. We need to find whichever way we possibly can to engage as many residents as we possibly can. I'm sure our officers will be working around the clock to be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yaku.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this is a really important initiative. I've been to a few play areas where there's like a missing seat on a swing, there's vandalism, and I think this is really needed in our borough. I just wanted to ask, what would the balance be in terms of proportionality for play areas for older children and then for the younger ones, like under 5? Would there be like a balance there, or how would that work? And also, what would we do about vandalism in the future? So once we've invested into these places, how do we protect them from vandalism? And also, in terms of the development in the town centre and the regeneration, I know that there will be some play facilities there as well. So how does that fit into the 23 zones that you mentioned?
Thank you. If I can pick up, first of all, about what's needed, I think it is needed for youngsters and the older ones as well, but also for those with disabilities. And we've been looking and putting in our play areas already equipment which isn't labelled for disabled or those with disabilities, but is ones that can be used by them as though everything was okay. And I think that's important. We've been doing that already in some areas, and we will continue to do that. That is part of the process. Can I just comment on what Councillor Dadd said? I didn't know that Councillor Callaghan has development going on in the town centre. I thought there was particular developers who were going to do it. And it was Basildon Council on its town centre revival committee who were pushing and showing what can be done in the town centre. That's a different argument.
I think it's semantics on what I'm saying. He's got a plan for his aspirations.
Yeah, you know the rules.
So I wasn't being political about it. I didn't say it was 10,000 homes. I didn't say high-rise L's. I didn't say any of that. I just said development. If you want to get politics, that's fine.
Explain the rules of this committee. Just keep it. When I put your hand up, I'll call you. I won't stop you speaking, but please don't interrupt. It doesn't do you any good or me. Gets me heart going. So, Mr. Taylor, do you wish to respond to the other points that Councillor Yaqub made? And then I've got Councillor Callaghan who wishes to speak, and that's the only other person who's indicated.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your questions, Councillor Yaqub. I think, yes, so that proportionality, I think, is important. Where we're looking at hub sites, I would fully expect, like we do with all our current larger hub sites, that we are seeing great opportunities for children and young people across the life course. I think that is a standard way we approach things. Now, of course, what we do individually with play areas is we consult quite far and wide as well. So all I can say to you is I can guarantee that what we will have there is what local young people and children think is exciting and important to them. So but I fully expect that's the case. I think where we still will have some kind of smaller local hubs, it's about getting that right, and about making sure that those communities that we're consulting with are directly impacting what should happen in the areas where they are. We've definitely had examples previously where local communities have been supportive, but they've been quite keen that it's for younger age groups because of the closeness to certain estates. And I think that's just about being an open and listening council and being able to act on that. And I think that's very much in the spirit of what this piece of work is all about, and what the strategy will do. With regards to vandalism, it's an ongoing issue. I regret to say, my personal belief, spending most of my career working in communities, if you engage communities in a project, involve them like I'm talking about doing, there will be that sense of ownership. Vandalism does reduce when things like that happen. So I think it's about doing things in the right way. And I would never be so bold as to say that we can end vandalism, but I think we will reduce it through a process like this. I would also say that if this process does see any rationalisation of play, we're not looking at rationalising our budget. So we should be able to kind of keep the maintenance going well as well. But of course, that's another point. With regards to the town centre, yes, we are looking at everything we can to improve the lot. You know, whether that's culture, whether that's active travel into it, whether it's play. And I think all of these are going to be very much part of our placemaking action plan that we are looking at currently. I've been talking to some of the consultants only before this meeting, and we are very keen that play is part of the town centre and part of the plans for the work in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to speak on this item because my ward of Pitsea North West is probably the most impacted ward in the whole borough when you look at the action plan and you look at the map. And of course, that could be seen as a negative. I see it as I'm getting more upgrades than anywhere else in the borough. And I very much see this as an upgrade plan that we are pursuing. Because of course, when you are in a position, and you will come to it in a moment when it comes to looking at your draft service budget, when you are in a position that we are in where, you know, north of £7 million has been hit because of COVID in terms of income and expenditure in 1 year, doing nothing is very much still an option. And I'm very proud of the fact that over the next 4 years, we are talking here about a £3.6 million investment into the upgrade of our play areas. And I think that is an important point to make, that we are looking to do that despite all of the pressures that the council is under because of coronavirus. I'm not hearing here any opposition from any group, party, member to the kind of criteria or the policy. There may be questions about how this goes to consultation in its next stage, but I'm not seeing any disagreement there. And I think that's testament to the work that you, Chair, and officers have done throughout the working group and the way in which you've approached this, that consensus has been found across the council, and I applaud you for that. And the only other thing I would say is that £3.6 million is for all the borough and across the entire borough. And of course, as Councillor Yacoub has mentioned, we will levy in the 106s and everything else as much as we can on the developers in the town centre. But if we are signed up to the principle that we believe in high quality play and we want good quality play areas, then of course this council now has the opportunity of all opportunities, because we have the best kind of play area imaginable on the table in the youth zone, which is coming to the town centre. And that in itself is an £8.1 million investment in youth provision and youth services for 8 to 19-year-olds. So I think that's a huge positive. And one of the things we know about the youth zone is that in other parts of the country where it has been tried and tested, it has impacted on things like antisocial behaviour and reduced within a certain radius antisocial behaviour by as much as 75%. So when we talk about vandalism and we talk about the impact on other play areas around the new town and around different parts of the borough, because the transport will bring in people from all over, actually what we could end up seeing here, Chair, is an increase in the usage of the other play areas as well. And I think that is a positive. So yes, we want to put this this strategy in place. The 3.6 million, yes, let's target areas of deprivation. That is a key requisite of the youth zone as well. So I think this is a huge positive. I think the way in which it's handled is very, very good. And as a ward councillor who, as I say, my ward is most affected by this, I think that the policy and the strategy is right, which is why it has my full support. And I commend you and the officers for the work that you've done on it, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Councillor Dadds did raise some points. If Mr. Taylor can pick those up.
Absolutely. First of all, I must apologise. My internet's just died, and I'm just tethering off my phone, so I don't know if I missed anything when anyone asked me any other questions. But apologies if that happened. Yes, so Councillor Dadds, I'm just trying to go back through my notes of the questions you asked, Councillor Dadds. I think you talked about.
I'm happy to clarify if you want.
Would you mind, Councillor? Because sorry, yes,
Councillor Dadds, if you just like to.
Yeah, just for a summary, I was talking about the demographic, deprivation, need, location, and that it's not necessarily about usage, but I want to make sure that there is coverage, so that in those particular areas there is a way of being able to walk a short distance to a play area, where maybe in other areas people can drive or have other means to get to a bit further away. So I'm making sure that it's not just about location, usage. We need to also take in the demographic.
Yep, thank you, Councillor. Apologies for that. Yes. I mean, we're trying to deal with this in the fact that everyone should be able to walk to a hub site. That's very much part of the concept. We're basing it on walking and not on public transport or needing a car or the like. It is based on the concepts, I think, of fairness. I think it's fair to say we do have a number of play areas. There are play areas and there are play areas, I guess, in my view, and I'm very, very passionate that play. I'm a father of 2 young children, use a lot of play areas every weekend, and I'm very clear that some play areas are incredibly important to the development of a child's early years and of the family network, I guess, itself as well. That hand-eye coordination, that taking risks, equipment that sees that children need to share and play together, and I think this is all very important. I think regrettably there are certain areas where we have a swing on its own or a slide on its own. There is no play value. It is I think therefore there is an argument to say that in certain areas children aren't getting the same benefits of the hub model, which you say is not a nice to have. It's very much part of a child's early years. So that is the basis for trying to do this work, and I think it will be impudent of myself and my team working with the chairman of this committee should the recommendation passed this evening, that we make sure that through the consultation process we are understanding unequivocally what the needs are for the local communities in that basis. Councillor Buckley spoke earlier about some perhaps issues with putting things on a consultation page on a website. Rest assured that wouldn't be our process. Where if it does need to be done digitally, it won't be just placed on a website. We will have a strategy very much in place, a common strategy about how we're going to reach as many people as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. That's most useful. Can I just say part of the problem is where developments have taken place, particularly in the new town, but some other places as well, where there's a small piece of land left over. Developers, let's call that a play area. It meets our obligations in providing a play area. And some of those are in the wrong places, parts of Basildon particularly. I think that's the part which Councillor Callaghan refers to in his particular ward, whereas there are a few like that, all close together with no particular play value. Stick a swing in, leave it, and they call that a play area. Now, that is something which planners, and with Mr. Brace can come in if he wants to, we're talking to them about what they allow, if you like, in any development as a play area. It's got to be more than a small piece of land they can't develop, just sticking a swing or a slide on it to meet their so-called obligations. Mr. Brace, do you wish to come in?
Yeah, just on a couple of bits. Certainly with the town developing, with the local plan being agreed, you know, some of the future proofing that we will have to do, but it does mean that where we may not want another play area for a small development, we may want to enhance one that's already there. So this document and this strategy will deliver us a plan for a long way into the future, and will also be able to hold our developers to account in terms of providing money for play. Well, I'd just like to say a bit about consultation, because we're fixing on the consultation that would be happening between now and March. That is not the only consultation, I can assure you, members, that we will be doing in the process of removing play. It will be a constant consultation with local people, definitely with young people, and there will be regular reports back to this committee in future on the progress of that. If things change, as Councillor Dadds has said, if demographic changes, if new housing changes an area, then of course it will affect what the play strategy may look like in terms of where play areas are, how big, what equipment, etc. But we will bring that back to members. But we need to get the investment that we know can be put in to bring play and get started on that job. But it will be under constant review, and we will be in regular contact with our residents around the changes in their area to make sure we're getting it as right as we possibly can, because the last thing we want is a new play area that young people don't want to use.
Thank you very much. Can I just pay a compliment to Grant, Mr. Brace and their team, who've worked very hard on this. I've had regular meetings with them on this, and the amount of work that's gone into it, in identifying the zones to try and make sure that they meet this walking distance, which we want to happen. So working out the zones was a difficult job in the first place, and it required a lot of expertise, and the work that's gone in, you know, thanks very, very much. But this is only the start. We've now got to make sure that over the next period of time and in the 10 years ahead, that we get this right, so that Basildon, right across the borough, have play areas that they can be proud of. And as new development takes place with a local plan, we must follow the guidelines, which I think Mr. Brace and Councillor Dadds has outlined there. They're the sort of things we've got to watch for in the future. And that's important for people who follow us, because they have to pick up this and take it forward to make sure it happens in the future for other people's youngsters as well. So moving to the recommendations, on page 19, that the committee notes the outcome of the consultation sessions with ward members. that the questions and scope of the subsequent consultation with local communities are agreed with the chairman of a Neighbourhoods and Public Spaces Committee before launching, that a further update report is to be provided. It says at the March 2021 meeting of this committee. That may come earlier if there's an update required, but they're the recommendations. Okay, I'll take the vote now. I'll be voting in favour. Councillor Dadds, if you unmute yourselves for voting, please. Councillor Dadds.
In favour, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Blake.
In favour.
Councillor Yacoub.
In favour.
Councillor Buckley.
In favour, but a request that you share the consultation questions with the committee as soon as you've agreed them.
Well, that's not on the recommendation. Are you voting for the recommendation? We're taking votes on the recommendation. If you had wished to move an amendment beforehand, you could have moved it. So I'll take your vote on the recommendations as they are.
I already said in favour.
In favour. Councillor Ferguson.
In favour.
That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Right, we now come to item 7, the draft service budget general fund from 21-22 to 24-25, including the review of fees and charges. That's on pages 29 to 177. Now, before I think, is Mr. Sparks going to come forward on this, or?
Rhiannon's going to do it, Chair.
Well, let me just say one thing first of all, is that I've gone through this with officers in quite a lot of detail on various levels of it. You will see on the budget proposals where we look at community centres and other things, we've identified what we in effect is the cost of items and the amount of income. So you get a percentage in effect of the subsidy to some of those facilities or whatever. And then when you turn to enclosure 2 later on, you will see that at the end of September, the outturn on this committee was going to be a deficit of about 2.3 million. That may have changed, and it may well change, and Mr. Sparks will obviously tell us where we have had some government funding towards that so far, what is expected, and therefore where we might be come the end of the financial year. Mr. Sparks.
I think Chair Rhiannon's going to introduce the report, Chair.
Sorry?
Rhiannon's going to introduce the report for you, Chair.
Rhiannon, I can't see
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a camera, so I won't be able to put my face on the screen tonight.
Okay.
I'll just give a brief overview of the contents of the report, and then I'll open it up for any queries.
Okay.
So this report provides information of the draft budgets relevant to this committee for the financial year of 2021-22 and the financial forecast through to 2024-25, set in accordance with the budget setting process and budget guidelines for 2021-22 as approved by Policy and Resources Committee on the 22nd of July 2020. The draft budget at enclosure number 2 on pages 39 to 59 of the agenda is the product of that, following the process and guidelines, and an extract from the capital programme showing the projects relevant to this committee is included at enclosure number 4 on page 173 of the agenda. The budget has been prepared on the basis of business as usual. Should the pandemic continue to affect the council's financial position in 2021-22, this will be identified and managed at the time. It is worth noting that the financial forecast for refuse collection and recycling is updated to reflect the recent decision made by the committee to segregate food and garden waste. Obviously, this is subject to further change as the new waste strategy is developed further. The committee is asked to endorse the revenue and capital proposals for inclusion in the overall budget that will be presented to Policy and Resources Committee on the 28th of January 2021. Included at enclosure number 5 on pages 175 to 177 of the agenda is a summary of financial performance to quarter 2 in 2020 to 2021. A schedule of fees and charges applicable to the services covered by this committee is presented at enclosure number 3 on pages 61 to 172 of the agenda. These have been set in accordance with the fees and charges strategy approved as part of the budget setting guidelines, and the committee is asked to approve these charges. At Policy and Resources Committee in January, the strategy for managing the future overall financial position of the authority will be considered. In addition, a series of briefings to assist members in their understanding of the more technical aspects of the overall budget are being held, covering such matters as Treasury management, the Housing Revenue Account and reserves. Colleagues from the relevant services are present, and collectively we are happy to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you.
Thank you, Rhiannon. Okay, well, when you look at the report on the pages 31 to 33, etc., there's detailed there how we've been doing in some of the areas, and I think we need to reflect on where this committee has lost income over the since the pandemic came upon us. What I would like to do now is open it to debate, and then officers can come back and ask questions and answer the questions. If any member, just raise your hand and I'll try and call you. Obviously, I expect some members want to come in more than once, so we will do that. It's not a problem. First of all, I've got Councillor Blake who's indicated, then Councillor Dadds. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can ask you to go to page 40.
Okay, I'm sure officers are turning to page 40 as well.
Okay, go on the management 387, then goes up to 406, and then is consistent. It seems quite a large. Do you want me to give you all of them and then answer afterwards? Is that the best thing to do, Chairman, or one at a time?
Well, I think it might. Well, if you're going to flick a lot of pages, I'll probably do one at a time, please.
Okay, and on the same one, just to clarify, really, and I don't have a problem. I hasten to add the employee 30.3 going up to 33. I not having a problem with that. Just need clarification on that. So.
Mr. Brace has got his hand up. He's going to give you the answer, I think.
Yeah, on the management administration, that is the costs of the digital strategy implementation across services. So the early costs for that are being put into the budget. And on the employees, that is for the apprentices. So developing our own, as it were. So that's the increase in employees in planning to help support that.
Thank you.
Great, lovely. Page 41.
41, yeah.
The employee, let's have a look. 581, the employee, 581, 613, and again, then becomes consistent. The rationale be behind the huge increase there initially.
That will be pension and pay rise in that year, because there is a large increase on both of those in percentage terms, but then for the prediction for the future, it won't be as large.
Okay.
Page 44, he says. Management again, probably going to be I'm assuming that's the same reason, the management, as last time, Paul.
Yeah.
Thank you. Page 45. Again, you've answered that, but the same goes there. That's not a problem again. So I do apologise for that. 46. Environmental health going down in employees. Hope that's not the case, because one of probably the busiest places going at the moment. If you can just clarify that for me.
Yeah, it was increased by one person as one was off on maternity leave, so we brought cover in, so it increases the FTE by one, although there was still only 21.8 working.
Right, page 51. I'm trying to get to it myself as well now. So 51, and that's again, that's been explained already by some of your previous comments on employees.
Stay there, Councillor Blake. While we're on page 51, I'm going to end on 50. I'm going to raise the question of third-party payments, because Mr. Brace will explain those, but I feel that they should be in more detail what the third party payments are, especially on parks, open spaces and recreation ground. My view is that third party payments relates, as I understand it, for everything from grass cutting, maintenance, whatever we do. And I think that it will be useful if this budget can be changed, that we identify under what headings they are. So there's an allocation for each, so that we are, as I said previously on play, we are proactive in what we have to do to make our facilities better, rather than making them, we react. Somebody, a councillor phones up, I want this done, I want that done. Okay, as an overall budget there, we'll spend it. And sometimes there's nothing left to do for something we should have planned to do. Now, to me, that's important. So those third party payments, in my view, need to be broken down. Mr. Brace.
Yeah, just on that one, councillor. Yeah, we spoke to my finance colleagues, and that is something we would do, but we unfortunately couldn't do it in the time to be able to present it to you this evening. So apologies for that. That is for grass cutting provided by ID Verdi for the rest of the borough, and other maintenance that they do for us. So that's within the contract that we have with ID Verdi, which of course we can review at any time, but we will be more detailed in future around those third party payments where it appears on the budget.
And while we're talking about the third party payment to ID Verdi, etc., on the grass cutting, so the committee know, I've asked officers to prepare a report on the amount of what it cost us to cut the grass for highways, and in terms of what we deal with cleaning footpaths, with the responsibility of highways, as opposed to how much contribution is made to this council by the county council. If they're giving us too much, great. But if they're not giving us enough, we need to know why. And do they need to cut the highways grass themselves rather than us? So I've asked for reports on how it's done. So I think that's fair. Members should know about that. Mr. Brace, do you wish to comment on that? You do know I was going to say it.
Yeah, I do know. We will start that work, and we'll bring it to the January or February meeting. But I'll let you know as soon as I know I can get the work done.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Blake. I'm getting mixed up. You moved around again.
Yeah, so yeah, the next one's on page. Only two more, Chairman. Page 52. I would say at this particular moment in time, the country parks, particularly the people are now one of the only places people can go and are enjoying it. And I actually think even after coronavirus, they will continue to see what fantastic facilities we have in the borough regarding our parks and country parks. Just querying the employees 15.6 to 14.6.
Sorry, that's the one I can't remember. Grant, do you know why that's dropped in employees? Sorry to put you on the spot.
It was. I'm trying to think who that employee is. I think it's a member of the facilities staff at Wat Tyler, and who retired, and we managed to cover the work within the team. It's not the staff that are actually looking after the green and growing, councillor.
Right, I think I'm happy with absolutely everything I've got there, but the one, in my opinion, possible controversial one is page 61.
61?
Going down to it. 61.
Yeah.
Right, I'm trying to get to myself. Now, I understand about charges, having, as I say, being chairman on this committee before and cabinet member, and I know the understanding of how cheap Basildon Council have been in the past, and we should be equalising that. I just on this one time possibly have an issue, and it is the only thing I really have an issue with, Chairman, is the 5% for police schools, dance schools, scouts, disabled groups, and things like that. And I know it costs us money if we don't charge that, and I accept that. I just think possibly on this one occasion, and I do understand it in the past because I've done it on many of them, I think maybe that could be looked at again, Chairman. That's my own personal view. Obviously, this committee recommends it to P&R, but that's just something that I'm not necessarily. All the other answers absolutely fine, just not too comfortable with that. But that's it. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Can I just, all those charges you refer to on that one, which are on page 62, are all subject to VAT, are they?
No, they're exempt.
No, they're exempt.
Yeah. Oh, there's a couple there. Storage is vatable, but the hire of the hall is not.
Okay, I'll take the point you're making, Councillor Blake. We were talking about 40p an hour increase, aren't we? It depends on the usage and how much you're saving, to be honest.
It wouldn't be a considerable amount, Councillor. Not a huge amount.
Yeah, I accept it's not. It's possibly not much. It's not huge for them either, and it shouldn't be huge for us. I'm just thinking in the climate we're in, and I know we can't keep on doing handouts and all that, but a hand up rather than a handout is well. It's just saying that the only thing that I'm slightly uncomfortable about, Chairman, if I'm being honest.
Can you leave that one with me, Kevin? And Mr. Bryce,
certainly, Chairman. Thank you.
Just so I will talk to you and my members afterward later, and I'll let you know. Just let's run through so the officer can say to me, yes, it will mean this, you know, because I don't know the amount of usage they've got, so they can come back and say, well, those are used by that. I don't know how many scouts groups we've got using the halls, for instance. Are you with me?
It's Councillor. It's up above. I'm just working it out for you.
Are you really?
Yeah. I've got 3 accountants in the room, but I'll do it. It's £300.
£300.
That's on the disability groups.
We're talking about disability groups, are we only?
Well, that was the one. What else was the other one?
Well, he missed preschools as well and scouts, didn't you?
Yeah, I did mention scouts as well. You know, kids dance groups. They're just those few that are on there.
I know it's a difficult one, but I'm looking, and my view, I do accept on disabled groups, I would leave it as it is. As on the others, I think it depends on the usage, because preschools and dance schools may well be small businesses, for instance, rather than independent thingamajig. So, Councillor Dad, do you wish to come in on that one?
Yes, because it was actually one that I was going to ask to move an amendment in relation to the Scouts and Brownies, because they are not for profit, a charity. I can't comment on the dance school preschools in there. If they're not for profit, then I don't think there should be any increase. If they're private organisations, then I'm not going to comment. But I want to move that certainly for the Scouts and Brownies that there should be no increase this year, given that we want to encourage participation, people to get out, and they're raising the money from the parents for subs. I think they are a great organisation, and I think 5% this year should not be increased. So I'm going to ask for an amendment that be removed. I don't know if there's a seconder.
Can I just add? I'm comfortable with that, but I would add disabled groups to it as well.
Yes. So I proposed that. I think Malcolm Buckley was going to second me, but I'm happy for you to. I think Malcolm Buckley was going to second me.
Well, I'll add an amendment to that. If you add an amendment, an addition to that, which I think should be disabled groups.
I agree. No, I'll add that onto it. Can I ask Malcolm Buckley just to second me, please?
Well, I'll second it and I'll second it. I'll second it and add.
Okay. Yep. Fine.
Disabled groups.
Yes. Okay.
Does anybody wish to speak against that? No.
Okay.
Right. We need to vote then on that slight amendment. We do it now, so it's covered and done and dusted. Okay.
Yes.
Quite clear. No increase for disabled groups and the Scouts and
Brownies.
Cubs and Cubs and Guide.
Yeah, and youth groups.
Brownies. Okay.
Yes.
I'm in favour. Councillor Dadds is in favour, obviously. Councillor Blake.
In favour.
Councillor Ferguson.
In favour.
Councillor Yakub.
In favour.
Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, in favour.
Okay, thanks very much. Kevin, Councillor Blake, did you have any more?
No, that was my only issue. I actually don't have a problem with the whole budget in that sense going forward.
Okay. Who's next in line? Councillor Dadds.
I just had one point of clarification first, and then I wanted to comment if possible. On page 97, there's reference to charging for parking. Could someone just clarify if this is a new charge from 9 to 10? Because at the moment, Park Run, we took a view that we wouldn't charge Lake Meadows Park. I think it was before sort of 10:30, because there are some people that go to Lake Meadows may take over an hour to complete because it's not a race, and they may have mobility, may have a number of issues. But we obviously, if Park Run starts normally at 8:45, some people won't be finished, and then they'll be caught out by the parking. So
you're talking about the last item on page 97.
Yes. So it's just really clarifying what's happening with that, and that may also influence what's going on in other parks. I don't know, but I'm only commenting on Lake Meadows because I know that Park Run use that on a Saturday morning.
Well, on that
one,
on that one, there's no change from the current budget. It was on what I'm looking at. It was 30p.
Yes, but I think it's the timing. The timing was changed, I think, for something like 10:30 to 11 to stop all day parking, but didn't prohibit Park Run.
Okay, Mr. Brace is going to come in on that.
I'll let James will answer that because he
James will answer that. James,
he'll remember what we've done.
No, thank you, Chairman, and thanks for the question, Councillor Dadds. The parking charges, as outlined on page 97, relate to Monday to Friday only. We continue to obviously support and encourage Park Run, particularly at Lake Meadows, and we've worked Park Run in the past, as you're aware. So we'll keep that arrangement. The charges here do not affect that arrangement with Park Run.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In relation to the general comments, I understand that the council finds itself with challenges, but there appears to be a number of charges in relation to sport and the hiring of football pitches, cricket pitches and the like, with increases substantially. I mean, I think the cricket pitches and some of the football pitches charges are up by 20%. Now, I would see that as in effect like a tax on sport and leisure, when that it's such an important for well-being, for all sorts of mental health, physical health, and getting people engaged. Particularly where we've got lockdown, where we've wanting to get people out and about. Is it this year? Is that the year for when you start increasing, substantially 20% on some of these areas for hiring charges? So I just raise that as a real concern that some of those costs are much more than inflation. And substantial, and given we're in the crisis we're in, we should be encouraging people out to be healthy and to help with their mental health. Now, also,
can I pick that one up? Councillor Dadds, if you let me pick that one up at this point in time, I'd appreciate it.
It's just a comment. I'm just making my observations, but if you want to stop me halfway through, it's no problem. I'll stop.
Now, on that one, I'll be frank. We went through, looked at the charges and the cost of maintaining cricket pitches and the income. And that is why we were subsidising cricket to the tune of 519%. That's how much we would have had to increase if we'd have said there was no subsidy for cricket. The 20% still brings in a minimum amount, and we only increase it by a fraction compared with the amount it costs to maintain cricket pitches.
Yes,
so,
but
hang on, 22 cricketers go out on a cricket pitch for a game of cricket for a full day or whatever. The average cost per person is less than £4 for a day out. Now, that's at this cost. Now, we're subsidising that. We have to maintain those cricket pitches. On bowls, I met also with officers, with the bowling community, and the one particular one was quite happy. So yes, we should be paying more because of the cost of maintaining the greens. Now, football is a 5% increase, but we're subsidising those to a hell of amount. Now, it's fair enough, but don't come back and say you don't want to put the council tax up, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that. This committee needs some income. Now, it's some difficult decisions. Now, you know, if you don't want to increase the charges, the majority of members say we don't want to increase them, so be it, we won't increase them. But we'll have to find out where the income comes from. Councillor Dadds, I'll let you go on.
In fact, I'm quite happy for your comments, because I understand, you know, cricket is played by two teams, but people watch, people participate. It's a game. I haven't just chosen cricket. There's a number of sports here, but I'm happy to talk about cricket. But there are youth teams that play with the cricket. There's been huge campaigns to get children involved in cricket. There's girls' cricket. So children, you have a number of teams. It's a great sport. And if we price them out, you know, that's going to be a real difficulty, I think, in keeping sport for all. And it's not we'll favour football over cricket or rugby over another sport. And it's like the increases, you know, on scouting, all the increases across the board. There is an absolute tax being placed on all these leisure and sports this year. And you may say, well, look, which ones do you want to do? Which ones do you want to cut? But what I'm saying is about proportionality. It's disproportionate to increase to the level that you propose, of 20%. And that may have an adverse impact on some of those sports that we want to continue, encourage, get people involved and engage. And I think it is really important. Now, obviously, each individual club will comment. I'm just raising the point. There are many activities like the football. You know, the increasing on the charges of football are quite substantial. But the thing is, there's a huge benefit to us for health, the NHS, getting people engaged, mental health. It's not just the cost that we're subsidising of someone's play. It's the cost against mental health, well-being, all the other stuff. So I think it's the whole package. I think we've got to be careful of what we're doing. I mean, we on one hand, we're being told by others and famous footballers and the leader of the council talking about the importance of play, youth zones, people getting active and well-being. Well, on one hand, we're sending a message out that you can go to a youth zone for 50 pence and get involved and engaged. But on the other hand, we're hiking taxes up by 20%, charges for sport. There's a conflict there. And I'm just saying, look, hang on a minute, is this right? And you may say, no, Councillor Dadds, that's what we're doing. That's fine. But I've had the opportunity to be heard. I think there'll be many, many members of the public concerned with the hike and tax on many people going out to do sport, young children, young adults, young persons, as well as adults in our community being heavily taxed with an increase on their sport.
Thank you. Councillor Blake.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I don't agree with half of those comments. To say that you're starting to put a 20% increase, that's not true. Because these are decisions that I certainly made when I was cabinet member and chairman's committee. We put quite large increases on, and the reason why we was doing that is because we was equalising ourselves from other boroughs. We were one of the cheapest within the county, you know, and all we was doing is equalising that. You've got to also remember a lot of these people that actually possibly come into the borough to play are not necessarily residents of the borough, so it's not necessarily their council tax that's subsidising it. So all we're actually doing is, in my opinion, is equalising ourselves with other parts of the county. By simply doing this, and you know, maybe the error lies many years ago, not blaming any administration, but many years ago, when we was going in so cheap. We had the issue with I think it's the BAS card that we had at one point and whatnot. So, and again, people were benefiting from that who weren't part of the borough. If they had one member who was a member of a football club who had the BAS card, they would get a discount. All the other 10 members of that football team, for example, could all lived outside the borough. So it's all about equalising. And I don't think it's fair to say that we shouldn't start to put these costs up. These costs have been going up for a long period of time. And I know we're in a certain different climate now, and I do accept that. But we're still far cheaper than almost any other part of the county. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. I was going to say these are benchmarks with other local authorities in the area on these charges. So you've got to bear that in mind as well. Okay, who's next? Anybody else? Councillor Buckley, I can see you waving.
Right, thank you, Chair. I did wave a couple of times earlier, but you didn't nod, so I guess you didn't see me. So that's fine, no problem. I've got a couple of general questions, and I wanted to pick up some specific points. During the presentation by the officer, it was mentioned about the separation of the green waste and food waste, which incidentally isn't something I object to, but we haven't made that decision yet. It's later on the agenda, so I'll just correct that part. Maybe the committee will decide against it, for all I know. We will find out later.
Can I comment on that, Councillor Buckley? First of all, the separation of food and green waste is going to happen, whether we like it or not. That's going to happen.
Legislation.
What's later on the agenda is how we do it. That's the discussion later on.
How and when.
How and when, yes.
Yeah. The other point which I wanted to make, and Councillor Blake touched on some of the costs and some of the issues around staffing costs in particular. I understood, maybe I've misinterpreted the announcements from government, that there was a pay freeze for public sector workers. Have we factored the government's direction on that into these costs? And then I'd like to go on to some specific points after that, Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Sparks will answer that question. Can you unmute, please?
Apologies. So, no, we haven't yet, Chair. So it's only announced today. So we'll look at the implications. Obviously, as local authority, we're not civil servants, so it doesn't directly affect us. But obviously, we'll be reviewing those assumptions over the next day or so.
Okay, well, we'll obviously have to wait for the assessment on that. But my understanding was it was all public sector workers, and I always thought the council was the public sector. But yeah, we should deal with that in June.
If it does, though, there was also, as I heard it, an increase for those below a certain wage level.
Yeah, may well be. I haven't read the detail of it either. So
24,000.
Yeah,
24,000, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I had got a couple of other points, but I'd got quite a number, and some of them have already been asked. On page 107. There's some listings for costs of various items, waste bins, waste sacks and so on. Is that just for commercial customers? Because as far as I know, we don't charge for a waste bin or a caddy. Yeah, I don't know if somebody can respond to that. Also, I was going to raise the issues on charges for the various sports, which Councillor Dadds has already mentioned. And I am concerned at the high percentage increase on some of them, which are 20% or thereabouts. And I've just posed the question, in some of these cases, should we be looking at that being phased in? And I understand the cost that we shouldn't be subsidising some of these activities, but a big change in 1 year is going to make a significant effect. I've lost the page for the moment. Season tickets for car parking. So I've managed to lose the page for the moment. But if you look at the season tickets for car parking, there were charges for borough residents and charges for non-borough residents. and there is a differential between the two. And I'm just posing the question whether, in fact, for the non-borough residents, we should actually be charging them somewhat more, because at the end of the day, our car parks should not be subsidising somebody from Chelmsford or Castle Point or wherever else in their journey to work or wherever else they're going. And final point I want to make on page 172, which is about the pitch hire in Basildon Town Centre. And again, there are some of the rises there are significant. I question that the businesses that run those pitches tend to be smaller businesses. They probably operate on fairly tight profit margins. We're having an awful lot of work done to the town centre, and it may well be more depending on what plans do or do not go ahead, which is another discussion. And I just think that we're really challenging the people that run those stalls and pitches in the town centre, and I think maybe they are an area that we should be looking at, because there is a benefit to bringing people into the town centre, those people are not just contributing by the rent they're paying, but they are bringing people in who are supporting the other businesses and shops. And the last point was around cemetery charges, which again seem to be a significant increase. In particular, all of us fear the outcomes from a case of COVID. Like you, I've got my bus pass and would be considered vulnerable for a variety of reasons. Do we really want to punish people for passing away during the period of a pandemic? I just think the timing is wrong on that. So I'll leave that to officers to respond, Chairman.
Right, Mr. Brace, did you want to come in on those points, or Mr. Hendry?
Oh, Mr. Hendry, certainly on the charges for the bins and sacks.
James.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Buckley, for your question. The charges for bins and sacks are for supplementary items. So this is for the green bin charge, for example. Householders get one bin free of charge. If they need a second bin for their household, the charge is for the secondary bin. The cost of liners and things like that, when we, obviously we're not through them at the moment, but through the libraries, through the BAS Centre, when we were selling the additional ones, they are at cost recovery as well. So hopefully that helps with that one.
On the season tickets for car parking, if I remember rightly, it was a previous administration that actually did make them a lot cheaper to encourage parking. And I'm not sure what the difference is now between when that was and how much that was and what it is now. So someone can answer that, I'm sure.
I'm happy to answer that one again, Chairman. So the discounted charge, the level of season tickets we sell for non-residents of the borough is very low. Most of the season tickets go to residents of the borough. A few years ago, there was the decision made to discount season tickets at Wickford Main because we weren't selling any. There was, I think, 3 or 4 annual season tickets being sold. Decision was taken to discount them. That proved popular, and it was picked up, and that was the decision was continued after that trial period. So that's why there's differences in season ticket prices between Radford Crescent and Wickford Main. Thank you.
Okay.
In terms of the burial costs, obviously, as approved of how we set the budget this year, the minimum of 2% was on all. So in terms of cemeteries, that 2% has been added to those charges. So obviously that's in draft if members wish to alter that charge.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry,
my mic's not. I didn't realise.
That's something obviously for you, Chair, to put to the vote.
Well, I'm looking across the board. You see, there's the general charge across the board. Correct me if I'm wrong, one of the finance officers will is a 2% increase in line with inflation. Our other costs are rising in line with inflation. So the income has been worked on that basis. And one or two, as we've mentioned previously, have increased to work on the basis of what it costs to provide that particular service. If members, as I said, if members feel you wish to change something and the majority agree, we can change it. But when we come down to fixing a budget in February, some people are going to have to say where the money's going to come from instead. What are we going to cut elsewhere to maintain the budget in this particular committee even? Councillor Dadds.
Mr. Chairman, given the current climate of the national emergency, we have deaths in our borough, we have uncertain times. I think it would not be appropriate to increase the burial charges this year in line with inflation. I propose that there should be no increase on the cemetery burial costs, and I don't know if anyone will second that.
Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, I will second that, Chairman.
Can we refer what page we're talking about, because it's so easy to move.
Yes, it's page 110 and page 111, and then I think it's 112 and 113. It's the charges for interments, etc., and then there's the charges for burial. I think that's correct, is it right, officers, that they're their pages?
Yeah.
And I think it goes through, Mr. Chairman, up to sort of a number of pages up to quite a few actually. It goes all the way up to 119, Mr. Chairman, on cemetery and burial charges.
Okay, can I ask the financial officer present on the impact of that decision was made not to go ahead with those charges?
It's about 10.
I'm just flicking through them at the moment.
10,500. It's about an impact of about 10,500, I think.
How much?
I think it's about 10,500 on income, the impact.
Yeah.
But we may have an increase in deaths during the year, which will have an increase in the other budget coming in on the normal cost. So I think a calculation needs to be calculated that we've got an increase in death rate.
Okay. Okay.
Hugh, can you confirm whether we have had an increase in burials since March?
No, there hasn't. The numbers have remained very constant throughout the pandemic so far, fortunately. So there hasn't been an increase in numbers.
Okay.
I obviously I've made the proposal. I think it's I'm not. I think it's appropriate at this juncture that we shouldn't be increasing the costs on burial and already a very stressful period of time for everyone.
And I've seconded, Chairman, so it's in your hand.
Yeah, it is. I'm just looking at the figures. Bear with me. Bear with me. I wish they would be larger print, these figures. Okay. We'll go around. Councillor Blake wishes to speak on this one.
Thank you, Chairman. This might make you unpopular, and I totally understand where Councillor Dadds and Councillor Buckley are coming from. I generally do. But as has just been mentioned by the officer, there's been really no increase in deaths in the area regarding that. And I just want to point out I believe the fact, and I'm happy to be corrected by officers, but again, when I was chairman or cabinet member, I think we all at one point, certainly for people coming outside the borough, we actually doubled the cost of burials, which was something, again, it was equalising so that the people of the borough weren't actually paying for it in their taxes. I just got that in my head. I just wondered if that could be confirmed. So we really did put some increases in the past. And just want clarification whether I'm correct on that or not, to be absolutely honest with you, if I may, Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Brace.
Yeah, I can't recollect the date, but yes, we did increase the non-resident charge by 50%. So it was double the charge of the resident, and that's of course so we can ensure we have got burial ground for our residents and not for those from other parts of the county.
Okay. Anybody else? Mr. Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, Chairman. I get the point that Councillor Blake's made, and obviously these services do have to cover their costs. And I think, subject to Councillor Dadd's agreement, I would certainly be quite content to see the charges frozen for Basildon residents and those outside be increased as proposed, which would obviously reduce the cost of the reduction.
Okay. Well, how would that reflect on the figures, please, somebody?
Well, I don't think we'll have that calculation tonight, Councillor. You're not the breakdown of individual transactions. So sorry about that.
Okay.
I'm happy to amend it that way if it gets consensus, Mr. Chairman, because I think it is an important point. We've not experienced something like this as a national crisis, so it's not a normal year.
Councillor Ferguson, did you have your hand up? I didn't.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't, but we'd just like clarification.
Sorry,
we'd just like clarification on the increase and whether that's consistent with previous years.
Yeah.
So we increased them last year as well by an inflation charge. I'm like that on this, to be honest, because I don't see a problem in what you're suggesting, but I'm looking to see where else in the budget then we can make some inroads to recover that income, because otherwise it's easy to delete or change things and take them out, but someone sometimes got to be brave enough to put some back in, and I haven't heard any of that tonight. So anyway, we'll take a vote on that. Okay. Councillor Dadds. As amended.
As amended, yes. Yes. So in favour.
Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, in favour.
Councillor Blake.
Abstain.
Councillor Ferguson. You're muted.
Against.
Councillor Yacoub.
Against.
And I am going to vote in favour. Okay. So that is carried. Okay. Well, now we're going to go to next. I'm going to raise something. Page 97. Car park charges. At the moment, they've only increased by 10p on the main, on most of them as they were previously. The loss of income on car parking charges has been significant this year. We've given the free car parking in our car parks for a lot of the time for everybody. In the last month or so, for only 3 hours free. What happens from January, we do not know yet. I will come to that later on when we do the COVID impact assessment. But here we're looking at this. Now, my view is that car park charges could be increased. By what amount? Do we, and officers, I'm speaking off the top here, I see, and I've looked elsewhere, we benchmark, we're the cheapest in Essex for car parking on boroughs, what we charge, 60p at the moment, and then £1, 10 pence. For 2 hours, mate, on the average. I see no reason why they shouldn't be increased. As to what amount, that's up for discussion. I'll be interested to hear other members' views on this first. Councillor Buckley, you're usually very talkative on car parking. Councillor Day.
I am indeed, and as you know, I pay a particular interest to car parks because I think that they are one of the core suppliers of customers to the businesses in the town centres. As far as I'm concerned, our car parks are principally shopper car parks. Might make a slight exception for the swimming pool. And I would not want to see short-term parking costs increased. I don't have an issue with you increasing all-day charging because that is used by commuters. Those commuters are not spending their money and their time and their energy in our town centres. But short-term parking, I do think we need to keep. I would ideally keep it free, although I recognise that that won't be a proposal that would be accepted. But I think longer-term parking, 4 hours plus, there is scope there to charge. And I think going back to what Mr. Hendry said, car park charges, long-term season tickets in particular, were increased a few years ago. Some usage did drop off. I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing if it creates space in the car parks for people that are actually going to use the businesses in the town. You could perhaps look slightly different. It's unfortunate we haven't got car parks of our own in Basildon, Langdon, Pitsea, but obviously, you've got the car parks in Pitsea where you can park free of charge. I don't know what's going to happen ultimately when the development's finished at Langdon, but Basildon Town Centre itself, I think, whilst you could argue it is a better shopping centre than the others, and probably it does, if you like, have a higher value. I think, again, when you look at the demise of the high street, you need to keep it keen and competitive for shoppers. Swimming pool, car park at Wickford, we make a charge for, and we've got a 1 hour charge there. Do people use the pool and or the gym for just 1 hour? I suspect a lot use it for a bit more than that. And I think there's probably scope for saying, let's make that a 2 hour charge. If you are going to put it up as you've suggested in the budget book by 10p, extend the time to 90 minutes or 2 hours. So give people the time to use the facility in the swimming pool car park. I'll emphasise the swimming pool as opposed to the others. If you can, I would certainly keep the charges as they are, or as they were before we made them free of charge. So that would be my thoughts on it, Chairman.
So you wouldn't increase at all?
No, I didn't say that. I said I would increase the long-term charge.
Okay, can I ask a question then? Because I'm talking about Wickford at the moment. I'm sure Councillor Dadds will refer to Billericay. As you know, Malcolm, the biggest problem in Wickford in a normal situation on a Saturday is you give free parking all day Saturday, and with the football season when it's going, when that car park is full, because West Ham's got an early home game and a kick-off, and it's full up by 10:30, and then shoppers can't get in the car park because people are gone. It's cheaper than going up the station.
Yeah.
So how would you feel about so many hours free on a Saturday and then a charge, i.e. to prevent these people who use it for, in effect, a different reason than shopping?
I would have no problem with extending what we have now, 3 hours free, and then you pay.
Yeah, I don't think we can do that every day of the week.
No, you were talking about Saturday.
On Saturdays. No, I agree. I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do on a Saturday.
Yeah, bear in mind, it is a shopper's, sorry, I'm cutting across you a bit, Chairman, but it is a shopper's car park. It's not a football supporters car park. And if you look at the challenge of commuters, I believe you sit on SEPP's committee, and if you look at the amount of requests that are going in for parking restrictions by residents, then I think indicates the fact that there is a lot of abuse of parking by commuters, whether they're for football or work or whatever is a different matter. But I don't really want to see the whole town covered in parking restrictions, or any other part of the borough if it comes to that. But unfortunately, it's the way we're having to move at the moment. So, as I say, a nominal charge after 3 hours would probably resolve the problem you've referred to. I do accept that in the normal working week, you probably can't do it, because going back to the time when I ran the portfolio, it's quite a long while ago, unfortunately, I seem to remember it was something like £70,000 came from the first hour or 2 hours parking, but it's quite a big sum. So that's where I would stand. Don't increase for the short term, but do increase for the long term. And I'm not averse to the pattern that we have now working on a Saturday. I don't know if the machines are that easy to program or whether
they are now. They are now.
Yeah, I know they're electronic, but I don't know whether that's as
they're far better. The new machines are far better. Can I bring Councillor Dadds in now, then, please?
Thank you. It's always a difficult and contentious subject, but I think there is a difference between short term, encouraging people to come into the town to shop, and obviously those increases we need to keep manageable and reasonable. I think I don't necessarily, for Billericay, if someone's staying later than the 2 hours, because that's generally the 2 hours is the sort of normal period of time, then above that, and obviously then the cost increases. Obviously, I know some ladies will get their hair cut. You and I will not spend 2 hours getting our hair cut. But these
days.
So I've never spent 2 hours. So so I think that it's somewhat difficult on a Saturday. I know we've offered that before. The issue here in Billericay has been that it's then occupied primarily in the early hours by workers, and I have sympathy with workers, because if they're on the hourly rate of pay, paying for car parking is difficult, but we have to balance it. It's not a car park really for workers and commuters or any other reason other than really for shopping, because we need the car park space for customers to come in, park and use the shops, and in turn it gets them economically viable to pay their rates and all that sort of stuff. We are in uncertain times and the high streets are changing at the moment, but certainly I would say we need to try not to increase the short term. I would not be adverse to the long term, because sometimes the long term stay people that are remaining in the car park actually do more harm to the local economy, because obviously you want it turning around in spaces. So they're my views, but it's, I'm happy to listen to what you have to say.
Oh, I'm listening. I'm listening. Who else wants to come in? It's all gone quiet. Right, no one has a view on car parking. I find that interesting. Can I suggest that?
Are you going to park that idea?
No, I'm going to. Very good, David. I suggest that for January we come back for the report on this, because I think there's some relevant points been raised, and I think it'd be fair to have a report back on the various options, because there have been suggestions from myself, from Councillor Dadds, Councillor Buckley, on where we go. And on Saturdays, perhaps, it is different in Billericay, and I think that's been recognised previously, Councillor Dadds, by the morning charge on a weekday. And it is about being a bit different. And I'll be honest, my view, and it won't happen at this point in time, that at some time in the future, we could, when the finances or whatever gets better, to offer a certain amount of free time all of the week for shoppers. And that may happen, but is something, a lot of work we might have to go into before we can get to that stage. Because I think Councillor Callaghan's still here. If the car parks in Basildon are operated by BTCM at the moment, if BTCM ends up being the car parks run by Basildon Council, we would need to look at the whole different issue and how the car parks are across the borough. And therefore, there may be different ways of doing it in different areas. As, for instance, I'm talking about that part on a Saturday in Wickford. Councillor Dadds is talking about the mornings in effect in Billericay to keep the spaces for shoppers. So there are different options rather than a blank piece of paper and saying this applies everywhere. So I think there's something worth noting. So thank you for that on that one. So I've delayed this now by talking about car parking. I'm sure members had other things. Please say so. Otherwise, if not, I'm going to go to the recommendations at this point in time, which are on page 29 and 30. Recommendation is that the proposals for the revenue budgets and capital programme as set out in enclosures 2 and 4, relevant to this committee for 2021-22, and the financial forecast to 2024-25 be endorsed for inclusion in the overall budget to be presented to the Policy and Resources Committee on the 28th of January, that the proposed fees and charges as amended tonight and set out in enclosure number 3, relevant to this committee for 2021-22, along with the charging directory, be approved and included in the final fees and charges schedule, that the forecast outturn position for 2020-2021 be noted. Okay, if the members would unmute themselves, we'll go around and take a vote. Councillor Blake.
In favour.
Councillor Dadds.
Against.
Okay, is against your amendment. Councillor Ferguson.
In favour.
Councillor Yakub.
In favour.
Councillor Buckley.
Against.
Well, I will vote in favour, and I was in favour of both of the amendments, and I'm surprised the movers of those amendments are now opposed to what we're doing. We will now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the waste strategy. And let me make a few comments on that first of all. I am disappointed at what was issued on this by the Conservatives, because there has not been any discussion on charging or fortnightly collections of black waste bags by anybody. The only thing we've been talking about on the working group, there was a waste strategy which was approved by this committee in November 2019. We are now governed by 2 acts of parliament and 1 potential act of parliament. The Climate Change Act was passed in 2018-2019, just before Theresa May handed over to Boris Johnson. That became law. The Circular Economy Package, which was the European Union's message and was passed and was incorporated in July this year into legislation in this country. And the environmental bill is now currently going through the House of Commons and is now at the committee stage and is expected to be law in early 2021. So we are guided by those 3 pieces of legislation when we're looking at the waste strategy, because there's dates within those that legislation which we and all other local authorities in this country are going to have to meet. And it's going to be the way we collect waste is very, very important. The Circular Economy Package is what it says, that you start with something and we persuade businesses to produce and package in things that can be recycled. And as they're recycled, things go around and you use recyclable materials to start again. That's the basis of it. And if that happens, the amount of residual waste collected will reduce dramatically. Now, the working group was set up, a cross-party working group of 7 members, and I think it's been very, very constructive. We haven't all agreed on everything on there. In fact, the recommendation this evening is slightly different to what I personally supported at those working groups, but that was the recommendation of the working groups, and I'll go along with it. Now, I think that to then say, to come out publicly, and it produces an email which went out to all members from a member of the public on the basis that we are going to do fortnightly black sack collections, we are not. The discussion tonight on waste strategy is, in effect, to have a trial, first of all, in separating food and garden waste. Food waste is going to have to be collected separately from garden waste. So that was the first thing which the working group looked at. We do know that we're going to do it in a different way. We have to do it in a different way because the places that take the waste as it is now are reducing dramatically. And by probably September next year, there'll be no one possibly who will take them. So they've got to be separated operationally as well as a result of legislation. Now, we want to do that. There is a recommendation for a trial before we see how the best way of doing it. We want to use electric vehicles to collect the food waste. We have that trial, and the recommendation tonight is to approve a trial. Let's get feedback from that trial, and then ask the member working group to look at the next stage, which is the collection of mixed dry recyclables. Because in the environmental bill, it's quite clear that the government is going to be looking for recyclables to be collected in the standard way across the country, and that's the mixed dry recyclables. And we have to meet a target of that by a certain date. So we're asking the working group to look at that, because that is going to be the next piece of legislation. How we collect residual waste is a much longer term thing. That's going to come once the government on its instructions and people have followed those instructions and we get everything right. So how we collect residual waste, that's going to come perhaps 3, even 4 years time. That's a general picture. And I think that members should talk tonight on the basis of the recommendations, what they feel might come out of the environmental bill and the other 2 pieces of legislation, because there will be decisions in the future for perhaps not this administration, perhaps the new administration, whoever that may well be. But if we don't start now, we will not get the thing right. So, and I think it's very important. And I can only say this, there's a lot of work gone in the background over the last 13, 14 months on this. And the officers, and if people remember, I don't know who was on the committee in November 19, we had the guy from, I think it was People 2, correct me if I'm wrong, someone will. And he was very good, he explained. We've taken the staff along with us on this, the depot, and it's important the way we're doing it. I think we're doing it in the right way, and we don't deserve to have leaflets or statements going out from Councillor Baggott saying something which is totally inaccurate and is causing problems. It's caused me a problem. The emails I've been getting for something I haven't said, I find astounding, just as a result of someone saying something which wasn't going to happen. I'll make it quite clear. My view is at the moment, and probably for a long while in the future, we will be able to have a weekly black sack collection. It might not be in a sack, it might be in a bin, but I see no problem. We also want to do something different. 15% of this borough is different to the other 85%. There's places where we can't do curbside collections. There's flats. There's places like that. People don't have green bins. We have to treat them differently. It might be some of those areas need to be collected twice weekly rather than once weekly. So it's things like that we're looking at. We need to do it different. We're not treating the whole borough as being the same. Officers are now working to identify that 15% by talking to staff who collect. We're not hoping, I'll say this, we are going to have in-cab technology in our vehicles in July next year. Route optimization will be in place by then. I'm quite firm on this. I know Mr. Brace is solid on it, so don't let me down tonight, Mr. Brace, because it's going to happen. I think it's been a clear direction from the administration, through myself, to make sure this is done. If we get that done, we get away from the pieces of paper being passed round at the depot to get jobs done. We get a far better way of working. That comes along with the way we have a strategy in dealing with all of our waste. So I think it's important. I've probably gone on far too long because this was Mr. Brace and Mr. Hendry's part, but they've not convinced me because I'm sold on this. I really am. It's got to be done. If we don't do it, the government may have, if you look at the draft legislation of the environmental bill, I think there's pieces in there where they could enforce upon us and tell us we do it another way, or we do it under another authority's auspices, rather than letting us do it properly ourselves. We're going to do this properly, but it needs support of all members of this council. It's not a political thing. It's a Conservative government that is saying, in effect, you must do these things. So listen, read, and we'll do it together, and we'll do it properly. Okay, I've said enough. Okay, I've astounded everybody. We'll go to the vote. No. Councillor Buckley, then Councillor Blake. And I've asked Councillor Sargent here tonight, but Terry, if you wait, I'll call members in first over the committee, and then you can join in. Okay.
Yeah, Chairman, sorry, I thought the officers were going to make some comments.
I thought someone was as well, and I was astounded.
Well, obviously, Mr. Brace is smiling away there. So, okay, to the substantive points, everybody recognises that waste collection has to change. There's no two ways about that. As you rightly say, it's in government legislation, in particular to separate the food waste from the remaining organic waste. It happens that at various occasions in the past, I've actually worked at some of the places that process that waste, and that certainly a lot of them that were either using in-vessel composting or that are using the materials for energy generation were struggling to make them work effectively. I'm talking about major generating companies for that. The food waste, however, is something slightly different. They do seem to be able to make that successful. So purely in terms of cost alone, the cost of processing food waste separate to commingled organic waste is significantly less. But don't be misled, as far as I understand it, and I might be corrected by Mr. Hendry because I don't actually pay the bills, but there is still a cost. It is just that the cost is lower rather than us receiving a receipt for it. So that separation is a given. I'd like to just make a couple of comments on some of the things which are in the report. First of all, about the trial that is proposed. I don't have an issue in principle with the trial, but all of those roads that are listed there are roads with small gardens who are less likely to generate garden waste as well as food waste. So I think actually you need to add or replace some other roads in there where you've got, if you like, a better average of the properties across the borough. The issue of the issue of the food waste bins, again, not a problem with that, but I do have friends in Southend, and they've used the caddies outside, or I call them a bucket really, but the caddies outside their front gate, and they've found when they've been emptied, they've ended up blown up the road and run over by the traffic. So that needs a little bit of thought on how you're going to handle that side of things. There is a mention in here of providing liners for them for a year. It happens, we have a waste bin inside which we put a liner in, and every couple of days it goes out to the wheelie bin. But what does concern me is you're talking about supplying them for a year, and I think either you supply them permanently or you don't supply them at all. It's perfectly feasible to wash out that type of bin. I assume they've been, despite the anti-plastic movement at the moment, I'm assuming they will be plastic bins that are provided as they are in other areas. Also, just on the issue, and Chairman mentioned electric vehicles, and in principle, yeah, no problem with moving over to electric vehicles. But what does worry me is the thoughts in there that we're going to suffer a vehicle return penalty. 112,000 is mentioned on here. And I would rather replace those vehicles with electric vehicles when we get to the end of their lease or contract, whichever they are, and save that 112,000. I accept there's an environmental issue about emissions from diesels. I drive a diesel car myself. I changed the one that you know of, but so that's an issue. There's also mention within the report on page 183 of the wheelie bins, if I'm reading this correctly, the garden waste bins being collected fortnightly. I happen to have the misfortune to have two oak trees in my front garden with TPOs on them, and we fill up 2 bins this time of year each week just with leaves from the oak trees. Admittedly, I'm probably one of the worst cases in that regard, but I do think that there's going to be some issues with fortnightly collection just on that basis. The other issue, there's talk about the 20 collections a year, in other words, taking 2 or 3 months off, which one assumes would be the winter period when the less green waste is generated. And again, that does concern me, because with our changing climate and so on, seasons are changing. If we set January to March, what's going to happen to the waste generated in that period, or December to February? You know, it's arbitrary what you pick. It does concern me that the less responsible people in the community will end up fly tipping it down the road, and that we know fly tipping has been an issue within the borough generally, and I do appreciate some of the steps taken to alleviate it, but I think we are at risk of promoting is probably the wrong word, but letting people think that fly tipping is the easiest way to get rid of the green waste. So I think probably, yeah. So, oh, sorry. The other thing was just the timing of the trial. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but talking about from the 7th of December, it's not realistic to do a trial over the Christmas and New Year period when collections are a bit haphazard anyway. I don't mean that in a bad way, but we all know that collection days change over that period. So I think you need to have a rethink over the dates, and a rethink over the actual properties that you use, or whether you add some other properties to them. I'm relaxed either way, But that would be my suggestions to you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Can I just talk about the trial? My understanding, and officers correct me if I'm wrong, the places were selected after an assessment on operational grounds on, I assume, the amount of waste that's been generated normally in those areas in talking to our drivers, etc. So we get some knowledge of the type that comes from those roads. That's why they were selected. I'll be corrected, but I think that's my understanding of it. So let's, Mr. Hendry, you want to come in on that, Mr. Hendry?
No, you're correct, Chairman. So the roads have been picked based on operational suitability. They aren't the biggest gardens, the smallest gardens. It's a small selection of households to undertake a more qualitative study and to try and get some good feedback from residents on how the service might look.
And there was a discussion on the working group on the timing of the trial, and it was the view of the majority on the working group that this would work at this time because we need to get some answers fairly quickly. It was a different period. There could be different amounts. It was a judgment. Now we've taken that, the members took that judgment on the advice of the operations, the way we operate, and I think it is the right decision. Okay, anyway, I can't see people with their hands up at the moment. Councillor Blake. Do you want to come in first, Mr. Blake?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just to reiterate some of the things you said, what Councillor Buckley just said regarding the time, that was one of, as you remember, during the working group was something that I raised initially. And as you say, it is, you're quite rightly saying, it's a judgment call. I have to say, a bit like yourself, I didn't get everything I wanted on it. I didn't necessarily 100% agree with what was said, but it was the majority that comes out with the recommendations, which we all sort of accepted. It is a recommendation. Let's make that quite clear from that working group. That's all it is a working group. And it's here where the decisions start to get made. And I think that was emphasised right at the beginning of the committee. I have to say, I think the committee itself has been absolutely brilliant. I think that it's been challenging. Very challenging at times to officers and whatnot. Some really good questions coming in from all sides. So it's been really good and encouraging. I support the recommendations that you put forward, and I think you made the point that whilst it was proportionality politically based, the actual, in my opinion, the committee was not political. It was just a good working group that worked well together. And I will go over it, and you know, it's to a degree this hurts me to say. I will be honest with you, Chairman, but I agree with you. There not one time was even a mention of going to a fortnightly collection with black sacks or costs. I honestly have no idea where. I saw the press releases in the paper, and I thought I genuinely have no idea where that's come from, because it just wasn't even discussed. And to be honest with you, I think you said it at the meeting as well. This is the easy one. I think after this one, we start getting into the real difficult choices that we've got to make. So I'm hoping that the working group will continue to work well and come forward recommendations for this committee to decide whether they want to go forward with it. But my own view is I fully support this, and it's been a good working group, and long may that continue, Chairman.
Can I comment on the working group, Councillor Blake? As we said, this working group has been set up. It's not a working group. It's going to finish its work come end of April. It's a working group. Whether its membership will change, it possibly can after elections. It's a working group that's going to be required for the next perhaps 2 years or so, to work on the way we deal with waste. Now, yes, there are difficult decisions ahead, and there was talk because of a charge, but it wasn't a charge on black sack collections. There was talk because we said other boroughs charge for green waste collections. Should we charge? That was put off, and we said, no, that isn't a decision to be taken at this point in time. It may be a decision in the future. It may be a decision pushed upon us, because in the environmental bill, there is talk, because the government has spoken and talked to local authorities, And it's a balance. A lot of authorities want to charge, a lot don't want to charge. And it's a balance at the moment, whether there'll be anything in the Act when it comes out that there will be, you will have to charge or you won't have to charge, or you can make your own minds up. That's up in the air at the moment. I think that was pointed out as well at the working group. Now, Mr. Brace had his hand up. Did you want to come in first, Paul, or do you want some? I'm happy to take Councillor Dadd's.
No, I'm happy to follow Councillor Dadd's. There may be other questions.
Okay, fine. David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know the full history of this. Obviously, I remember before when we were looking at this as ideas. I know that there were discourse before about charging green waste, which I've always been opposed on the basis that it's a double taxing because you already pay for your collection. So I have some difficulties with that, and I know that as you say, the difficult discussions ahead. But what I heard, and maybe maybe you can clarify it, but what I heard from you at the outset is the potential of, at the moment, you couldn't go anyway to fortnightly collections because, in effect, there's 15% of the community that couldn't, in effect, participate. So, and our vehicles at the moment, with the technology, doesn't mean that we can undertake that task in any event. But because obviously there are issues about flats, they're not in bins and sacks and holding that waste back. Because, as you know, I have a business in the borough. That's why I stand as a councillor. But I live in Chelmsford City, and there are fortnightly collections, and you have to hold quite a lot back on the recyclable waste. And the bi-weekly collection does have its difficulties at times. But what I heard from you is that you're changing the technology, getting new vehicles, looking how you address the 15%. So is it that you are looking at the possibility of fortnightly collections after the July, once you collected the data, or are you saying unequivocally now, so the public know, you're not doing any appraisal or any assessment of fortnightly, you're not looking to change their kit to allow that to be done as an exercise, and absolutely ruling out now that there's no fortnightly collection on the horizon in the next, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years. There's no officer undertaking that appraisal assessment to go fortnightly collection. Just an unequivocal no.
You're talking about black sack collections, aren't you?
Yes, yeah.
Right. At this point in time, honestly, no one is looking at all at black sack collections, how we deal with it, period, full stop.
Okay, thank you for that point of clarification. I have no other points. I just wanted to clarify where we are on
well, that. I don't know, Mr. Brace put his hand up there, and I'm not going to tell me something different because I'll be furious.
If he tells you something different, I'd like to come back. If you call me back in, that'd be great.
Mr. Brace, yes.
No, I'll give all members clarification of the process we're going through. We're doing collection by collection, and there is an order to that, and Councillor Harrison's outlined why. Residual is last. What I will remind members is the whole point of the waste strategy and the Environment Bill is not to generate more waste, it's to reduce waste at the point that the public and residents are generating it. So this is to reduce what people are throwing away, not finding different ways to collect more. So what we should see by a process is if we get green and food right across the country, then we get mixed recycler right across the country, residual waste should reduce significantly. That will mean, in Basildon's case, if we get it right, 60% of what goes into a black sack that is currently going into a black sack is actually recyclable. And if that is dealt with properly by our residents and they engage, we will see a 60% drop in residual waste. So that we're currently collecting. What the future is, what that looks like, if we get everybody engaging, it's a massive bunch of ifs, and equally how we are going to dispose of it, which at the moment is a county council function, and we need to work with them as to the best ways of doing that. What the future holds in 2, 3, 4 years' time, I don't know when we get to the point of residual waste. But if through reading the Environment Bill, the steps that you would take to get to it, residual waste should significantly reduce. So I take your point, Councillor Dadds. Yes, storing a huge amount of rubbish in your house is going to be a challenge for anybody, no matter how big or small the house. But the idea of this is to reduce waste, reduce the impact of waste, and therefore that residual bit, which is the bit that the whole Environment Bill is trying to deal with, that is reduced to the absolute minimum that it can be. So that's the process we're going through. How that's collected, that's what we'll be taking step by step through with members, and certainly my team and those team on the ground that we get feedback from. We will look at every single option to be put in front of members, as we have done with green and food. There will be we won't be avoiding looking at options. They will all be there to look at for members to consider as part of the working group, and as they have done, decide on what we're putting in our report that's presented to you as it has this evening. We've not looked at black yet. There are lots of options for residual. There are lots of options for mixed recycler. We haven't even started talking about special collections. We haven't even started about doing all the other things that we've got to do with waste. So it's a step-by-step process. So everything is on the table because we haven't made a decision about what's happening. What we have got is a decision to make about food and green, which is the burning platform, as it were. Everything else will go through a process of looking at all the options with all the data and taking certainly into account what the Environment Bill is telling us is the right way to go. In terms of the vehicle reduction that was mentioned, yes, the way we collect, and if we're collecting less, we will be getting vehicles off the road. And getting vehicles off the road is one thing that we do want to do for number one, air quality, and start reducing our impact. And remember, those vehicles are doing 4.1 miles per gallon of diesel. So although it's going to cost us 112, we are impacting positively on the environment. So I realise there's a financial one-off cost, and we will try and avoid those with our contractor in any way we can. But we've also got the part of making our environment cleaner and taking vehicles off the road to ensure that we are delivering not only on the Environment Bill, but also on the Climate Bill. So happy to take any questions around.
Okay, thank you, Paul. David, did you want to add anything else? If not, I've got four other councillors, and then I've got Councillor Sargent who's been waiting patiently.
Yeah, just 60 seconds. Look, I hear what the officer says. I understand technology is moving. We're identifying those where that would need weekly. If you went to fortnightly, it's clear what the officer is saying is that the horizon looks a different place where that you may need not collect as much, 60% reduction. It's, quid pro quo is that you may not want to go and collect that every week. And that will be decision kicked off for the future for the committee to discuss. But clearly steps are being taken today to identify those 15%, change the technology in the vehicle so that should members in the future want to go fortnightly, we're heading that way. We're heading that in that trajectory, in that path, good or bad. But at the moment, because I think there are risks about town centre developments, high-rise blocks, 20-odd stories. How do you deal with those? How do you collect the waste with, thousands upon thousands of flats?
No, I think you're right, David. And this programme, I see it as up to about 2025, which I think is one of the first dates in the Environmental Bill which you must meet. So we get to a stage where this administration, the next administration, possibly one after that, there's a programme of work to do. It's been started by this administration. Some may disagree, but there's a way of doing it, and there's a way we're going to have to do it. The choices will become limited, in my view, as it goes on, because the government, under these three pieces of legislation, will ensure, as much as they can, the local authorities do it correctly. Now, I want to bring in now, I've got Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Yacoub, and then Councillor Buckley. Then I want to bring in Councillor Sargent and Councillor Callaghan's indicated he wishes to speak. And then
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, so Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and may I thank you for the work that you've done and the work of the working group. I know members of the Labour group have spoken very positively about the working group that's taken place and enjoyed the discussions that have gone on. And as you said, Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely right. This is the start of a long piece of work to first of all put us in the best possible position to respond to the environmental bill, but ultimately to reduce the amount of waste that there is within the borough. I'd also like to agree with your sentiments and express my disappointment in the strongest possible terms about the totally misleading claims that were put around. Completely unacceptable that was done by the Conservative group, and I thank you for putting that out tonight as well. I think that the trial is vital, and I'm really pleased to see a trial that looks at all 5 towns across the borough and will give us a really strong indication as to the direction of travel and the response that we need to make to that. So I look forward to hearing more from the trial and the report coming back to this committee so that we can make the right decisions on the basis of the evidence that's in front of us.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Yacoub.
Thank you, Chairman. I would also like to add to what Councillor Ferguson has said in regards to the misinformation that was spread by the Conservatives in regards to secret, controversial meetings that went on, which happened to have 2 Conservative councillors on that working group. But I wanted to ask a question specifically about the pink sacks. So in the report, it's mentioned that 12% of the contents are rejected because of contamination. What can we do in regards to that? What can we do to address this and to have maybe more information given to residents, more education on this to help meet our target of a recycling rate of 65% by 2035? Thank you.
Thank you. Can I comment on that? This is why the next one to look at is the dry recyclables, because there may well have to be a different way to collect that in separation, and therefore a one-off cost in the way we put what we put the dry recyclables into might result us in a big saving in purchasing pink sacks in the first place. But I agree with you about the contamination. That is a difficult one to deal with, and I'm sure Mr. Hendry or Mr. Brace will come in on that in a moment. Can I just bring in Councillor Buckley first? If you make a note of these points, Paul and James, would appreciate it. Malcolm.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Just to highlight a couple of things I flagged earlier that haven't been responded to by the officers or yourself. I did highlight about the cost on the highlight about the cost of the switch to electric vehicles and ask whether that could be phased, which I think that should be a fairly straightforward issue, because I don't like the thought of paying out a 6-figure sum just to swap them over, notwithstanding the environmental issues. On the green waste, obviously the agenda says 20 collections a year, which over 40 weeks is fortnightly collection. Is that a proposal you're going ahead with, or is that something which you're going to actually look at again? In other words, possibly keep weekly, possibly keep all year. I'm not saying what the answer should be, but are you prepared to give any forward commitment on that, as you did with what I'll call the black waste or the residual waste?
On the collection, the recommendation from the working group was a fortnightly, but we will not make a decision on that until we've had the trial. We want to see what happens first of all, and then we will come back to this committee. There will be a report as a result of the trial, and then we'll make a decision. On the other business of the £112,000, are you suggesting then I think that would be on the basis we'd lose extant, we're returning vehicles, aren't we, to do that? Yeah. We reduce our fleet from 10 to 6 vehicles. So you're suggesting that it might cost us an amount of that anyway in driving 4 more vehicles around the borough unnecessarily.
Well, no, what we're doing, the way I read this report, again, if officers can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm reading it that we're taking sorry, we're taking 4 vehicles off the fleet and replacing them with electric vehicles. That's what I'm reading.
Yes.
If that's not the case, then the report isn't sufficiently clear.
Mr. Brace.
I'll let James answer on vehicles.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to pick that one up, Chairman, if that's okay. Councillor Buckley, so the modelling that's in there at the moment is they are ballpark figures. They are saying that as we move over to, we estimate these are the number of food waste vehicles we're going to need. We estimate that deliver the model as the working group have recommended. We estimate that we are going to need this amount of vehicles and that the impact on our fleet is likely to be this. What we don't know at the moment is whether when the legislative change is going to hit or when the operational change is going to be necessitated to make that change. So we've based those estimates on return penalties based on best available information at the time. That may change depending on the timing of that, of when that change is needed and the final recommendation and decision from this committee. So they are based on best estimated figures at the time of writing. That may change depending on where we move later on.
Yeah, that's in the paragraph on the bottom, page 183, over on to page 184.
Yeah. I wonder if I could just follow that up. Are we actually? I accept if the schedule is changed, you may need less vehicles in total. Are we actually saying though that number of vehicles, were we to retain the diesel vehicles and not incur the penalties, would not be able to do the job? As far as I can see, the only reason for changing the diesel to electric appears to be an environmental issue, which I fully understand. But given that, as the chairman rightly said earlier, we have challenges in the budget, not only for this committee, but across the council. Should we actually be incurring that cost? Is there going to be a real benefit? And I'd remind you that generating electricity still produces emissions into the atmosphere.
Yeah, but the electric vehicles we would use wouldn't be the same as the diesel vehicles we collect rubbish in. There will be smaller vehicles to collect the food waste. Mr. Hendry.
Thank you, Chairman. I think a further point of clarity around this is just to be clear that the electric vehicles that we're proposing are for the food waste collection and element only. The existing vehicles wouldn't be suitable for that food waste element, so they're two separate things. The estimate for diesel vehicles and any return penalties are related to what we're currently estimating that we would need to deliver the garden waste service as recommended. So I hope that helps to split those two apart. That we aren't returning one in order to purchase the other. They are two separate things because the food and garden waste will be collected separately. There's separate vehicle requirements on both sides of that. So hopefully that helps.
It wasn't clear from the report. I read it as you were just swapping them for the sake of the alternative fuel. If that's not the case, that's fine.
I'm happy to clarify.
A report will come back, as it says, with a recommendation next one, either next committee or the one after that. Okay, Councillor Sargent has waited very patiently. Councillor Sargent.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you for letting me speak as a member of the working group. Now, I'm pleased to see recommendations here this evening that do not speak of green waste, because you all know I made it abundantly clear at the working group I was not in favour of green waste being collected for just 20 weeks per year. At the moment, the residents of the borough are getting a 52-week per year collection of their green waste. Many of them are extremely happy with that. They will not be happy with 20 weeks out of 52, simply because many of them, as been said this evening, have 2 bins per week, even in the winter time because of all the leaves. And so I am hopeful that when it does come back to your committee, that there will be changes made. I think the group has been recognises that the separation of food and green is that's got to happen. That was never, ever in question. So, you know, I think that's been made clear this evening. And the way that it's been collected in the caddies, there's no other way. I wasn't too happy, and I made that clear. I think I was just on my own, that I wasn't really keen on the bin liners. And the only reason, because the report says it's over £100,000 a year to supply bin liners. And Councillor Buckley has made the point on the fact that if you're going to give residents those bin liners for year one, you really do need to give them all the time, not just do it for 1 year, but it is considerable cost. And I would hope that you would relook at that. Another thing I was against is the trial. We were given, the working group had reports or slides. We were given what the trial was. I disagreed at the time because the trial will only affect just over 100 people, considering we've got about 180,000 population, 100 on a trial, where you're going to take that information to be the future of the waste. I totally understand James, because he's an excellent officer. I've worked with him for a long time. He knows what he's doing. But I think even Councillor Buckley has asked James that you just widen the scope slightly so that you are catching people that do want to have green waste less times a year, as opposed to those that want it more times a year. And the same with the food waste and the way it's collected. I know it's going to be very good to get the trial in that manner, but I don't think it's enough. You have said about consultation, but that's different from doing a trial, because the trial is totally hands-on. The residents you're trialling have got a really good understanding of what is going to be expected of them in the future. But when you carry out a consultation, and most of that was said, it was all going to be done online. And again, it's really difficult during COVID times where you're going to miss a large proportion of the communities because they don't necessarily want to participate online. So, you know, that's another thing. And again, as Councillor Buckley brought up as well, was this over the Christmas period. I mean, I said this before in the working group. Is there a rush? The bill hasn't passed through the proper channels yet. It's at the committee stage. You said that yourself, Chairman. So why don't we give ourselves a bit more time, because it really does need working out, because if we can get this right and let good trials, good consultation determine what people want, there won't be any or too much fuss from the whole community, because they will know what is expected. And that's another thing. And it was mentioned, we do need to educate a number of the residents on the way that we will be doing this in the future. I mean, lots of food waste is still put in black sacks. So what is proposed is going to be good, because food waste will be collected on its own in caddies, and therefore it will be easier, I believe, for residents to do that with food rather than not have a green sack, a green bin, and then just shove it in the black sack. So that's a good thing. There are lots of good things, but I think there are improvements that we could make to the process, this first process, because otherwise the working group, as far as I am aware, we'll have, and I stand to be corrected on this by yourself, Chairman, or the officers, that we have, the working group has no more dealings with food and green, because if there are charges on green, which I'm totally opposed to, that will be a decision that will be made at committee. That won't be made, because the working group is not making any decisions. It's just recommendations, but we're only recommending what's being put in front of us. And that's what I kind of oppose to, is that you should be taking some of our own personal account into consideration, because that too might work and it might not, and it should be part of the, you know, it should be part of the trials. So if I can be, you know, if it can be clarified, if this will be coming back to the working group at some point, or are we completely finished with green and food that goes to your committee? Because recommendation 3 is that the next thing that we do is we look at the dry recycler. And I think that if we no longer come back to it at all, that would be a great shame, because we won't know the outcome of the trial. We won't know the outcome of any consultation. And I think that will inform us by delving down with those officers in the manner that the working group has done, so that we can then make recommendations that are more meaningful than the short couple of times, 2 or 3 times that we have met. I don't think we've had enough time to really give it due diligence, what it really does need. And thank you again, Chairman, for allowing me to come along and speak.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. I will say this, that I didn't agree with everything that was said at the committee. But I'm not going to stand here and say, I didn't agree with this, I didn't agree with that, because if otherwise, all 7 members of the working group might as well come along and argue their case. We argued our case at the meeting. I accepted the ones that I didn't agree with. I think I would have hoped other members would have done the same. The trial is a small trial, 100. There's a purpose for that as well. It's been selected by officers, as they said, for operational reasons and talking. Part of the trial will be that our officers and staff will talk to those residents as well in detail of how it goes, so we can learn. And if we learn, we can get better. And it might well be we have to have further trials. When that comes back to the committee, because the working group has made its recommendations that we collect food and green waste separately, how we do it, whether we do it with, which is a suggestion, we're usually giving the liners away, we make it, so that's will become budgeted for, etc. We can't go back on every item. When it comes to a question, or whether there should be charges or anything for whatever, that will be for a committee to decide. That's always the way the council will operate. So I think the working group has been very successful. I've got copies here of all the conversations, and I thank Charles, who came to the meetings. He's been project managing this, and he made all the notes of what everybody said, and I've got all the details here, but we don't want to circulate those, but I think it'd be unfair. But everybody had their say, and it's very important that we allowed them to have their say on the working group, even when we disagreed with one another. And as a recommendation come forward, we're proceeding with it. We're going to have a trial. We'll see how that trial goes, and then this committee will decide where we go from there. I'm now going to bring the last speaker in, and then we're going to deal with the recommendations. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Give me my clarification, Chairman.
What clarification did you want?
James is aware. I did put it to James.
What was the clarification?
James, did you get what I asked for on the recommendations?
On the recommendations,
if we were because there's no green waste, on that, there's no mention of green waste on those recommendations. And so I said, will we be coming back? Will we be doing any more on food and green waste, the working group?
No.
Or is that it?
No, what I said was we will have a trial. If that trial produces something, it may well be, I say, or the officers say, we need to talk to the working group on this. We need to start again. We may have to come back with that. But I can't guarantee that it will go back to the working group. If the trial is successful, we will go then on to the next stage in the consultation. And the working group will start looking at the dried recyclables.
Which is on the recommendation. So that means the answer's no.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Sargent. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm here with my Pitsea North West hat on because there's not a week that goes by where we're not constantly engaged in communications with officers about the issues on various estates across my ward. But just to pick up on a point that has been said there from Councillor Sargent in her contribution, and I admire her patience, 3 hours for that. But she said that we needed a bit more time. I think 30 years is probably just about long enough, isn't it, Mr. Chairman, that this council has waited before it started bringing in what needs to be and is necessary changes for the way that we do this. And of course, we're talking here tonight about food and green waste, but and your working group has looked at, we have to change the service. You started, Mr. Chairman, by talking about the in-cab technology and all the rest of it. My residents get constantly fed up of the fact that we as a council, and I know this is a frustration for our officers at the depot, it's a frustration for our officers who manage the system, that we are so inefficient and we have to increase productivity in the service. And what we are starting here, I think, is a means to an end there. It's the first step to bringing this forward. And again, I would say to you, I congratulate this committee for the constructive way that it has come together. And, it takes minerals really for a chair to come to a committee and say, I didn't agree with everything that was at a working group, but I'm still going to bring it here and have the debate. And I commend you for that. And I think that is important, that we recognise that we are not dealing with a perfect service here. And therefore reforms to that service are necessary, and our residents want to see reforms to that service. But I do just want to pick up on the statement that was made at the start, and you have referenced in regards to the media coverage from the Conservative, the fake news that was on the Conservative Party website last week. If we are having, or if these meetings are secret, we've done a pretty bad job at it, because by my reckoning, we've published an agenda 7 days in advance that details a report, and we're here tonight streaming live onto YouTube. So if this is secret, Mr. Chairman, I seem to be missing the point, really, because I don't think we could have been any more open about that. But I also know, and again, Councillor Sargent has waited patiently for 3 hours this evening, and I've come along to speak here as well. But where is the leader of the opposition? If this issue is as important as is made out in that statement, I find it extraordinary that Councillor Baggott has chosen not to be here in order to listen to what is being said. And I give great credit to the members of this committee who, in their contributions tonight, have just distanced themselves completely from Councillor Baggott and from that statement, because the crucial line in there, and I think this speaks to the whole point here, was that Councillor Baggott said, where legislation permits, they'll reverse changes. And that speaks to the point, doesn't it? We are having to do some of this stuff because of the Environment Bill passing through the House of Commons now. And it's not like it's coming out of the woodwork from nowhere. It is progressing through the Commons. And, you were very kind enough to send it to me to read in full, which I did over one weekend. And it makes for riveting reading. But I would challenge, and I'd want to know, and I thought we were going to get this. This is the reason why at 10:05 I'm still here. I thought the leader of the opposition was going to come to tell me what amendments he wants to see in the Environment Bill that would prevent the changes that apparently have been done in secret, that no one can pinpoint what they are, but apparently there's some secret meetings and decisions that have been made. and he wants to reverse and change. And so I'm not hearing anything from anybody here tonight about amendments to the Environment Bill. I'm not aware that John Barron, who is conspicuous by his absence from the borough, I'm not aware that John has been lobbied by anybody on the Environment Bill. I've met with one of the other members of Parliament in the last month, and it wasn't raised with me either that anyone was lobbying on behalf of the Conservative group so against their own government's Environment Bill and the changes that we're having to bring in and debate tonight. So it does strike me as, and I don't want to be unfair because he hasn't bothered to turn up tonight, but it stinks a little bit of playing politics with a really important issue. And I hate that when councillors do that. And I think that we need to really, be strong on that, because, this is the forum, this is scrutiny. Come, let's talk about the Environment Bill. Let's talk about the amendments that you want to see to the Environment Bill. We'll lobby together if they are amendments that are worth lobbying on. But there's nothing. It's just empty noise, really, from the Conservative Party. It's fake news, and I think we should be robust about it. So, Mr. Chairman, from my perspective as a member for Pitsea North West, we desperately need changes to our waste services more generally. I'm keen to understand further about what the committee will do as you move on to looking at the other parts of this. I know my group are constructive in their engagement on this, and they're enjoying the work to get under the skin of this issue. So I thank you for that. But I lay the challenge down. If not this, then what for the opposition?
Well, I don't want that question answered tonight. So we're now going to go to the recommendations. I think it's important that we make progress. So the recommendations are on page 180, that the committee approves a trial of the preferred food waste collection model as recommended by the Waste Member Working Group, that feedback from the trial engagement programme on food waste is reported back to Neighbourhood and Public Spaces Committee, and that the cross-party Waste Member Working Group be instructed to review the collection of mixed dry recyclables with recommendations to be reported back to the Neighbourhood and Public Spaces Committee when complete. Okay, we'll go around the table. If members can unmute themselves, I'd appreciate it. I will be voting in favour of those recommendations. Councillor Blake.
In favour.
Councillor Ferguson.
In favour.
Councillor Buckley.
In favour.
Councillor Dadds.
Because of the U-turn, I can now be in favour.
Councillor Yakub.
In favour.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on. I've got so much paper here tonight, it's unbelievable. Item 9, the youth zone proposals. Next steps, page is 193. That's where it starts anyway, according to my notes. Okay, this is the next stage in the youth zone. We're getting to the position now where we need to move forward quickly. I think it's a very, very exciting project. It's something which I think will benefit the whole borough. I've sat on a webinar with head teachers from across the borough, from primary schools and from secondary schools, and there's great support from those schools, from Billericay, Wickford and Basildon and Pitsea, so it's welcome. Mr. Taylor, if you'd like to go just progress where we are now, we've identified the site. You're getting to the stage now, we need to authorise some funding so that OnSide can now get the development agreement being signed, and then we can make further progress to get this exciting project on the way. Mr. Taylor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yep. So I'm starting this report. Obviously, I know most of the members, all of the members on the committee, I should say, will know that we've been working with OnSide to explore opportunities to develop a youth zone in the borough, targeting young people aged 8 to 19, up to 25 additional needs, with a facility with large-scale multi-activity facilities. So officers have been working on this just to set the scene since the funding was put in the 2020-21 budget at council on the 13th of February 2020, And we've been doing a lot of work, as Councillor Harrison just mentioned there, in relation to providing, identifying a preferred site and negotiating with the landowners, and are currently in a process of holding a consultation with local young people. So today's report moves on from that point, although I'm sure we'll be coming back with the results of the consultation in due course. But tonight's report looks puts us now in a position to seek authorisation to formally release the initial funds, which will enable Onside to get to a situation to take a planning submission, and also to look at appointing the council's representative on the Basildon Youth Zone board. So one of the things we're looking for authorisation for here is to release the initial at-risk £300,000 of the already agreed £4.1 million. This will help Onside to form a professional team, as I said a moment ago, taking us through the process to achieve planning approval. I mentioned a moment ago, this initial funding of £300,000 is at risk, and it's made up of an initial tranche of £150,000, with a second tranche of £150,000 that would only be provided to Onside once we have received sufficient evidence that the money's been spent in the appropriate way. That's just a safeguard put in place for the committee to approve, hopefully. The initial £150,000 specifically covers certain items such as building design, planning pre-app works, the appointment of a officer who will be the senior philanthropy manager, drawing in the Onside side of the funds, and the funding will be released in advance of the development agreement formally being agreed and signed. I should let the committee know. So authorisation is also sought for the Assistant Director of Public Space in consultation with the Head of Legal and Democracy to complete and sign all the relevant legal agreements and structures with Onside to get the process going as well. And I should also reference that the initial 150,000 raising to the 300,000 discussed here is being provided to Onside prior to the preferred site being formally secured. The other aspect of the report I should mention is that we are, as I mentioned a moment ago, looking for authorisation for the council to appoint a representative to the proposed Youth Zone board as a trustee. The proposal set out in this report is that is the Assistant Director of Public Spaces. The board I referenced there is established as an independent charity and a company limited by guarantee. The way this works is that Onside will typically incorporate a new youth zone with Companies House, initially as a company limited by guarantee, but then it will progress to becoming an independent charity registered with the Charity Commission. This happens initially with 3 trustees. But following incorporation, the Youth Zone board will seek further board members, which will get us up to about 10 people. The report, you will also see, sets out some of the important added value that a youth zone will bring, whether that be employment opportunities to stimulate the local construction industry with up to 90 roles plus apprentices, or the 70 permanent jobs created, which will equate to 35 full-time equivalents and at least 2 apprenticeships, and importantly up to 100 volunteers as well, so really stimulating the voluntary and community sector. Onside run a really thorough talent academy, which looks at professional development of their staff and volunteers, and a young people's employability program, specifically aimed at those 16 to 19, which would be delivered alongside key partners from the local business community, who would hope we would be also supporting the youth zone itself. I should say that 83% of young people who complete the programme move positively into employment, apprenticeships, training, or further or higher education on average. Finally, there's one of the reference the return on investment here, with where we see Onside youth zones antisocial behaviour typically falling from anywhere between 45 to 77% reduction. So I refer the committee to the recommendations. And I'm happy to ask any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. Can I just add that when we were talking about a representative, officers discussed it with me as chairman, because the option was a member for the 3 trustees, one of them, this is the initial, that the council's one on side. Some of them have a member of the local authority as a representative, some have officers. My view was made quite clear that I did not think that one of the trustees should be a member of the council at all. And that is why it's recommended it be the Assistant Director of Public Spaces. That is the name of the position, not the name of a person. So as time goes on, it may well be that when we get round to the rest of the board, it might well be that a member meets one of the requirements of the board, but that's up for discussion later on. That's not for this committee to decide. The recommendations are quite clear. I'm going to call. Do you have your hand up, Councillor Blake? I'm going to call in first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I totally agree with your decision to make it an officer, and that's no disrespect to you or anybody else, but politics can change, and what you have with an officer, you have consistency, and I think that's the most important issue there. Now, anybody that knows me on this and would have seen in the past, I've abstained on this on a number of occasions, but I've always indicated that my glass is half full. I've made that consistent comment all the time. Now, some people might not believe that, but that's how I've stood. I'd like to thank you for and officers for the opportunity to have a one-to-one with a couple of officers on this. It was really worthwhile. A couple of questions that I was pleased to hear the answers to was the fact that throughout this has come from schools from all over the borough. And that's important to me because being leader of a group and my deputy leader coming from the other side of the A127, it's important that those people are recognised, as I'm sure you would appreciate. But so that's important. It was a big issue for me. So that the transport was a big issue. I will say I am going to support this. And one of the reasons why I'm going to support it, we're going to probably have heard in the past, there is never a good time to do this, and it's not without risk. And I went back and I thought about that when we was having this discussion the other day, and I raised the point. Well, was the sporting village not a risk? You know what? That was a huge risk as well because you had land for sale there that you just didn't know whether you was going to get the capital for it to fund it. But it was something that I believe with a passion then, and has proven to be a good choice. So I'm hoping and praying that this will go along the same lines. I'm not fussed at all about the building and how it's built. You know, that's down to planning issue. It's what's inside the building and how it helps the youth out. I was very impressed with speaking to Claire the other day, how detailed she was on issues, and really did. I made it quite clear I wasn't interested at all in the London boroughs, because the London boroughs had transport with tubes. It's absolutely irrelevant as far as I was concerned. But to bring it home, and the words were, I believe, it'll be bespoke. Each area will be analysed as to the need to get the children to and from that venue, and that word alone was very, very, very important to me. So I've been half full, abstained every time on this, but what swayed me was one about the travelling, but secondly was the issue I had regarding the fact that it's something that we took a gamble with last time with the sporting village, and it's just another stage in that scenario. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Kevin. Now, people, well, Councillor Callaghan probably know, my glass originally was probably only half full, but when Claire came to the first committee and told us about it, I then made further inquiries. When I found out how it operated in places like Carlisle and places like that, you know, in Cumbria, and how people were brought in, yes, you need to find out more about it. Councillor Blake has done that, and now I'm totally on board. I think it's going to be terrific for the borough. Having spoken to the heads, etc., the people who are behind it, I think it is going to be a brilliant thing for the borough. I've got Councillor Yakub, I think, had a hand up. I think I can't see her now. There she is. Did you have your hand up, Marion?
I didn't have my hand up, but I do have something to say. First of all, I think this is an amazing project. I think it's going to transform the lives of young people in the borough. I think it's going to act as a safe haven for people from deprived areas. I think it's going to give them access to things like music and the arts. So I think it's an amazing thing that we're doing, and I'm very, very proud to be a part of it. I had a question specifically about the board. It was said in the report that members of the community would eventually be sought to also be a part of the board. I wanted to ask what the process of that would be, how it would work, how would we make sure that it would be inclusive of everyone in the borough. So just some information on that, please.
Okay, I'm sure Grant or Mr. Brace will come in on that, but I think the rest of the board is down to on side rather than us. I'm not sure. I think it is though. So we will talk, and obviously we'll have a representative on the trustees. So that I'm sure those things will be taken into consideration. Let me bring Councillor Dadds in first.
I've been listening to some of the promotional videos and some of them reading some of the material, and obviously the aspirational part no one can fault, and I can see you know, providing facilities for young people in our boroughs is positive. Any project that we do has to be sustainable, and reading this, I do have some concerns about costs and what the risks are, in sense of, can it be affordable, can it be sustainable, and as I say, I have some points to make. For example, the land value. I noticed that the lease will be on a peppercorn rent, so clearly whatever the land value is, especially in a town centre location, what is that value and what is being lost, and the cost, and is this the right site, and obviously is it the right project given its cost and revenue cost. So it's just proposing a question in relation to the annual revenue costs. It's estimated at 1.3 million. What is that is to be met by a corporate sponsor of £800,000 per annum. Now, given the current economic environment and where we're at, what assurances have we got, and what comfort do we have that that is achievable year on, year out? Because if we're giving a lease for 125 years, if you're talking a 25-year project at least, you know, you've got to have a corporate sponsor year in, year out for a number of years. And how is that going to be secured and achieved? And if it is, and excellent, that great, that gives me some more comfort. In relation to the annual fees, clearly I want to understand how that's achieved. I know that we've heard about 50 pence per session, whether there's a £10 charge, I don't know, and we're looking to get 10,000 young people involved. I don't know what that is, and I'd just like to understand how that revenue is collected, and then the balance of 400,000 through the council. Remember how that's going to be achieved. Councillor Harrison, you were only telling me a couple of hours ago how we've got to squeeze, the scouts, the play groups, the after kids clubs, the cricket pitches, the football, all the other sports that are increasing, that Kevin Blake is happy to support a 20% increase. Brilliant on him, fantastic. However, you said that it's going to be tough, and we've got tough decisions ahead. And in relation to that, those tough decisions, but here you've got a decision of 400,000. Can that be explained? How are we going to collect the 400,000 and where that's coming from per year? Because obviously if we're having to nick an extra 50 pence an hour on hire for the scouts, an extra £2 here for the football pitches, where are we going to get 400,000 from? So all I'm saying is I want a bit of clarity on how this is being funded year in, year out.
The 400,000 is budgeted by this council. The rest of the money is provided by onside. I think they're also looking, the government is making an allocation to youth provision, which I think onside have made an application for funding towards. So the government have been supporting onside in various locations across the country already, and we're likely to do so in the Basildon one as well. The money from collections, etc., it's run by onside. Basildon Council would not be running the youth zone. Let's make that quite clear.
As I say, Councillor Harrison, I'm grateful you're saying that it's budgeted 400,000.
It's in the current budget.
Yes, I understand that, and you're saying that that's 400, but that has to come from somewhere. And in essence, where that money's come from is the extra 50p from the scouts, or the increase in the. No, I'm saying 400,000 comes from somewhere. It comes from the taxpayer.
Yes, it does. Yes, of course it does. The same as the loss of money for car parking, it comes from the council taxpayer. The same as the big contributions we make to the community centres right across the borough. The money comes from the council taxpayer. Of course it does. You know, of course it does. Where do you think else it comes from?
And as I said earlier on, we've heard about the extra small charges on the scouts, the cricket, the sport. All I'm saying is that you're saying that we have to have a squeeze.
Councillor
those costs.
Councillor Dads, let me finish, please.
Of course.
At this point in time, we are aware that every time there's been a vote on the youth zone, the Conservative group have opposed it. They find various reasons to oppose it. So for that reason, I'm now going to call Councillor Ferguson, and if any other member wants to come in, there's no point in listening to the Conservatives on this. They're just opposed the youth zone in Basildon.
I've raised a genuine point about cost and sustainability, and I think I'm entitled to do that.
I'm certain when it comes to the budget meeting, that'll be one of the things you'll be moving to take away. I'm pretty certain of that. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can't believe the comments that I've just heard from the previous speaker, trying to find reasons every time to vote against the youth zone and not support it. I believe in the young people across this borough, and I'm proud to be part of an administration that cares about them and wants to give them the facility they need and they deserve. Now, Mr. Chairman, I thought a youth zone was really important 9 months ago at the beginning of the lockdown period that we've been going through. I think it is incredibly important now. For the opportunities that it can provide, and exactly as Councillor Yacoub said, the activities that they can get involved in bring such benefits to those individuals. The benefits of and research has proved that where youth zones are in place, it leads to an increase in confidence amongst young people that are attending, an increase in skills amongst young people that go along, an increase in employment opportunities. Mr. Taylor touched on that tonight, and it's visible in the report on the increase in employment opportunities that can create, and also a reduction in antisocial behaviour in areas across the borough. And there are so many benefits of what this youth zone can bring. And I recall a conversation I had with a parent who sat in my surgery 2.5 years ago when I first became elected. He said that one of the challenges they're finding is there are just not enough activities for young people to do. We have a great voluntary and community sector across the borough, but there are just not enough activities and structured activities for young people to be able to get involved with. I spoke to that same parent a couple of weeks ago who shared my excitement for this youth zone project. I spoke to a head teacher last week who was incredibly excited about the benefits that it can bring to their students and to the wider borough. And I'm really pleased to see the progress that we're making here. The milestones and the recommendations tonight are really key milestones that we're passing. Having the development agreement, having the board being set up, and really taking people on this journey with us throughout the whole phase from start to finish. This is a youth zone for young people, led by young people, that is going to bring so many benefits to young people. And I'm really proud to be part of an administration and to be part of the committee tonight that is really taking this big step forward, as I said at the start, to giving the young people across this borough the facility they need and deserve. And I think if we look across the agenda that we've had tonight, We've looked at the progress that's being made on the Pixie swimming pool. We've looked at the play space review. We've looked at the investment here in young people. And I think what residents are really able to see is a progressive council that really cares about our residents, that really wants to make a difference and will give our residents the facilities they need and they deserve.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Right, I now intend to take the recommendations on page 193 and 194. I don't intend to read all 5 out, it's quite clear. And the second tranche of the £150,000 will only be approved in consultation with myself upon receipt of sufficient evidence of the first tranche being spent appropriately. I'm voting in favour of the recommendation. Councillor
Dad's is present.
Sorry.
Oh, yes, I am.
Thanks.
Sorry? I'm taking the recommendations on page 193 and 194. Is there a problem, Julie?
Councillor, no, it's just that Councillor Dad's had his video turned off and I just wanted to check he was present.
Oh, I see. I apologise.
Yeah.
I apologise. Okay.
I was always here.
I'll be voting in favour of the recommendations. Councillor Ferguson.
Proud to vote in favour, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Buckley.
Against.
Councillor Yacoub.
In favour.
Councillor Blake.
In favour.
Councillor Dadds.
Against.
That's carried. Right, we'll now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 10, provision and distribution of dry recycling sacks update report. This is on the change to the system where they were distributed on a yearly basis. I think the report is there. The question is this report just for noting or to continue? If the recommendations is to continue of the allocation of sacks to residents on an annual basis. This is something the previous administration brought in. I personally see no point in changing it at this point in time, whilst we're considering how we deal with waste generally, and the dry recyclables is the next one to deal with the working group. So anybody wish to come in on that? The report is there, it's quite clear. If not, I'll take the vote on the recommendation, which is to the committee approves the continuation of an allocation of sacks to residents on an annual basis with additional sacks available via request only. I will vote in favour. Councillor Ferguson.
In favour.
Councillor Buckley.
For.
Councillor Dadds.
In favour.
Councillor Yacoub.
In favour.
Councillor Blake.
In favour.
That's carried. Right. The next item on the agenda is 10A. It's a COVID-19 impact assessment. Mr. Brace is here somewhere.
He is. I'm back.
I think you've got 3 items, Paul, haven't you?
Yeah. So just want to give members a quick update on a few items that they may not be aware of. As I said earlier, leisure centres are able to reopen. The government obviously closed them from the 3rd of November, and we have been working as ever with everyone active to ensure that the buildings are safe. The buildings are being looked after while they're closed, because obviously there is opportunity, particularly with swimming pools, for things to go horribly wrong when people are not there. And I can assure you, again, they have done a very good job. They have also been readying for reopening when that was able to happen. And as we know, hopefully we will be able to open from the 3rd if we exit from the current lockdown into tier 2 or 3. There is some more difficulty around tier 3, particularly around exercise classes, etc. But we know that the team are working as hard as they can to be ready and are already talking to staff about returning. In terms of car parking, just to remind members, we made temporary changes to the car parking under my delegated authority from this committee up till the 31st of December. So to let you know that was the 3 hours free and then chargeable, which we've mentioned earlier. Therefore, just to let you know, we will be notifying users of car parks through social media and through notices at the car parks of the changes from 2 weeks leading up to the 1st of January, as we did see quite a lag when we put the 3-hour charge in of people getting hold of that information. So I wanted to assure members that that will be happening. Also, the sorry plight, I'm afraid, with the lockdown still compounding that community facilities couldn't open, and we're still struggling to find ways to open not only our own, but I know some of those lease buildings, which is particularly around ventilation and air exchange, which where physical activity happens, it is proving quite difficult. We have taken advice from a number of agencies, and particularly from the NHS, who have said that it is not a wise move to open those enclosed spaces for people, as they could cause the infection to spread. As reported last time at the committee, we have taken back responsibility for Langdon Community to Community Centre to assure members. We have had a number of people assessing the building, and they're now coming back with plans so that we will be able to reopen it at the appropriate time. But again, Langdon Community Centre, unfortunately, is one of those buildings that is suffering with a lack of ventilation, which is exacerbating the problem of not being able to open community facilities. So that's all I was updating on at the moment. Obviously, we are currently assessing all the guidance, new guidance that is arriving with us, and then we'll try and provide an update in some way to members before January, because it is slightly nuanced and slightly different from the previous tiering system, and the guidance is changing a bit. So we're currently assessing, but if there's anything major, I certainly will let committee members know.
Thank you, Mr. Brace. Can I just add on the car parking? I would like, hopefully this committee will agree with what I'm going to suggest, is that you give authority to Mr. Brace, in consultation with myself, if necessary, to continue the 3-hour free parking in our car parks for a following month, to see, to see the reactions. We just don't know what the circumstances are going to be after New Year. It may be necessary, but I wouldn't like to just say we'll put the charge back on now without knowing what the situation is. So if members are happy with that, I think I'd appreciate it. And secondly, I have arranged with SEP, we have arranged with SEP, to use some of the money allocated, because there's been a request from a local councillor in consultation with myself to put another ramp in for the disabled from Wickford Car Park across one of the roads, and that's a cost of about £3,500, I think it is, isn't it? And SEP have agreed we can use that money for that, which was in the allocation of 166,000 we obtained. We can make progress with that. Then I've indicated to the councillor who raised it with me that we would be doing this hopefully tonight. Okay. Are we happy to support those recommendations? Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, Chairman, no problem with supporting the recommendation that you're making. Just mindful of the fact that when we've traditionally had the free parking over the Christmas period, it's actually extended to the beginning of the new year. And yeah, I would suggest, because you've got a bank holiday at the beginning of January, perhaps we make the free parking until the 4th of December, subject to any other meeting.
It was the 4th of January, actually.
4th of January, yeah.
It was the 4th of January, the following, which was the date which we gave.
Apologies.
If it covers that period, that's fine. And obviously we need to review it. Yeah, sometimes I live in the past. I get told that fairly frequently, as I'm sure you do as well. But yeah, no problem.
Only usually by you, actually. Usually on election leaflets.
Well, I don't know about that. But,
okay, but okay, if everyone's happy with that, we can authorise then the expenditure. It's just rehashing this set money to make. I want to make it done properly. That's all. I think we could have just done it, but I want it done properly. So, Julie, Mr. Brace will obviously let you have the writings for those, but it's to give him the authority in consultation with myself to change the car parking, reduce or whatever for the fees in Wickford and Billericay if required, after January the 4th, after January the 1st, virtually.
Yeah.
And then the recommendation, spend £3,500 approximately on a ramp for the disabled from Wickford car park. Okay, thanks for that indeed. Right, that's that. So we now move to item 11, which is the exclusion of the public and press.
Sorry, can you take a vote on those recommendations?
Beg your pardon?
Could you take a vote?
Oh, I take a vote, yeah. Those recommendations are made. I'm in favour. Councillor Ferguson.
In favour.
Councillor Buckley.
Sorry, in favour.
Councillor Dadds.
Favour.
Councillor Yakub.
In favour.
Councillor Blake.
In favour.
Thanks very much. My apologies, Julie. So we now exclude the press and public. To consider excluding the public and press from the meeting, for consideration of the following item on the grounds it is likely that if members of the public and press were present during the item, there will be disclosure to them of exempt information as is defined by paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972. So Julie switches off the... Is that... Oh, we're going to vote on that. I apologise. I'm in favour.
Vote on that, sorry.
Councillor Ferguson.
In favour.
Councillor Buckley.
In favour.
Councillor Dadds.
In favour.
Councillor Yakub.
In favour.
Councillor Blake.
In favour.
That's carried unanimously. Thank you. If you'd like to turn the video off, we'll go to the last item on the agenda,